Chapter 3:15, Returning to Su Manor. 15. This glance, although cursory, yet it frightened Su Xian's heart and made him jumpy beyond flustered. Su Xian urgently bellowed at Su Jingyu in fury, "Why are you still staring blankly? Go and fetch all of your younger sisters now without delay." Su Jingyu had a somewhat stupefied look with a complicated expression. He silently took a quick glance at His Highness Prince Jin, lowering his voice to nervously ask, "Who should I fetch?" "All of them." Su Xian saw His Highness Prince Jin sipped a mouthful of tea with his indifferent expression. This made his heart all the more terrified. God knows once this Yama, king of hell, was annoyed and provoked, what kind of crazy stuff he would do. Su Jingyu muttered apprehensively to himself, "Is this necessary? Isn't just asking fifth younger sister to come fine?" In any case, Su Wan was already a fallen woman and Su Luo was basically a good-for-nothing. What's the point of asking these two to come? Su Xian saw His Highness Prince Jin frown, and he panicked. The palm of his hand hit toward Su Jingyu's forehead, while angrily roaring, "I ordered you to go, so you should quickly scram for your daddy." While speaking, Su Xian heavily kicked toward Su Jingyu's ass and directly kicked him out the door. Su Jingyu massaged his thoroughly aching buttocks. He had a gloomy and malicious expression, extremely unhappy, but regardless of his mood, His Highness Prince Jin was still sitting in the reception hall. None of them could afford to offend him. If they caused His Highness Prince Jin to be unhappy, Su Manor's entire residence would be wiped out to disappear in the vastness of history. This was also not something that was hard to imagine. After all, it wasn't like His Highness Prince Jin hadn't done something like this before. Alas, the pitiful second younger sister, heartfeltly studying for such a long time, in the end it was all wasted effort. Ultimately, she still let fifth younger sister take the cheap advantage, right? Only the fifth younger sister, Su Jingyu, was once again tangled. Fifth younger sister and the crown prince already had a vague relationship, father and the emperor also already reached an understanding. Within the next few days, the imperial edict would arrive to grant them the marriage. Now, His Highness Prince Jin came to make this move, catching them completely unprepared. This also made it difficult for them to choose. In addition, there was still His Highness the Crown Prince. Su Jingyu fidgeted as he needed his throbbing and jumping temple. Even though he himself felt that His Highness Prince Jin was someone the Crown Prince was unable to reach, however on the surface, he was clearly still a man on the Crown Prince's side. The Crown Prince also hated His Highness Prince Jin, to the point of gnashing his teeth. He and His Highness Prince Jin could not coexist. This point was one he understood clearly better than anybody. However now, this situation, just thinking about it would give anyone a headache. At once, Su Jingyu subconsciously determined that the person His Highness Prince Jin wanted to see was Su Shi. Because from his point of view, Su Wan's body was already ruined, in this lifetime, it was impossible for her to turn it around. As for Su Luo, she was simply an idiotic good-for-nothing. Even he wouldn't glance at her, let alone His Highness Prince Jin's type of god from the 9th layer of heaven, okay? If he was to bring Su Luo in front of His Highness Prince Jin, that would be dirtying His Highness's eyes. However, even though Su Jingyu was very unwilling to ask Su Luo, while following Su Xian's command from before, he had no choice but to go and ask. Consequently, he instructed 2 servants to go and invite Su Wan and Su Luo. He personally strolled towards the courtyard Su Shi resided in. Bang! The crisp sound of porcelain hitting the ground echoed within the room. Again, it was followed by the sharply clear, crackling and rattling sounds of things smashing to the ground. Hearing it made a person's heart panic and body jump in fright. Su Jingyu's eyebrow nodded slightly, he had an annoyed expression, so with quick steps, he walked inside. When he saw the scene inside, his sword-like eyebrows wrinkled into the Chinese character. Now on the ground inside the room, were broken pieces and fragments of porcelain. Every kind of thing that could be smashed was all smashed, even the table, chairs and furniture were all shattered into pieces. It almost looked like it had gone through a large earthquake. Su Shi, why are you again throwing a fit of anger? Su Jingyu glared at Su Shi with extreme displeasure. Chapter 316, Returning to Su Manor, 16, Now, the whole family was messed with by His Highness Prince Jin until they were in terrible shape. And she was still here smashing antique and chinaware to vent her feelings. What did you call this? Su Shi turned her head around to glare hatefully at Su Jingyu. She fumingly said, "You, leave me alone. You go and kiss up to second older sister. She will be flying up to the top branch in the position of the phoenix. All of you should go fawn up to her, that will be good. Why come to look for me?" Su Shi was pampered and spoiled since childhood by Madame Su and other enabler. She had always been unable to hold back her words, all of her emotions would be displayed on her face. Merely hearing her words, Su Jingyu immediately understood. It turned out this girl was drinking Qing'er's vinegar. Unfortunately, this girl didn't realize how difficult Qing'er's situation was right now. Su Jingyu, with both arms crossed, coldly cast a glance at Su Shi. She is your second older sister. If she can be Princess Jean, our entire family will rise along with her like the tides. Besides, aren't you and the Crown Prince exchanging flirting glances? You can become the Crown Prince's imperial concubine and still not content. Before His Highness Prince Jean appeared, the Crown Prince is not bad, but now, how can the Crown Prince compare to His Highness Prince Jean? Can he? Older brother, you use your own conscience and speak, can he? Su Shi was very forceful, drawing closer step by step, a pair of almond-shaped eyes glaring until they was huge. Both of her cheeks were puffed up, giving off a panting with rage appearance. You are such a bad girl, indeed really crafty and unruly. Su Jingyu poked her forehead and took her hand. All right, come walk with older brother. Where to? Su Shi clearly was unhappy, with one move she shook off his hand. Reception hall, a certain someone wants to see you. Su Jingyu's smile was somewhat enigmatic. Not going. Su Shi fumingly sat on the headboard of her bed while hugging the bed's pillar with her head leaning on it. I'm not going. Not happy going. Not willing to go. Who likes it, is who should go. Oh. Really not going? Su Jingyu felt that teasing this little girl was extremely amusing. The messy chaos in his heart was swept clean. In any case, whether it was Qing'er or Xi'er, both of them were his younger sisters. Moreover, both of them liked His Highness Prince Jean. It was better that he as their older brother to not control so much. Yeah, don't want to go. Older brother, go quickly, quickly go. Just seeing you irritates me. Su Shi impatiently waved her hand. Su Jingyu lifted his foot and was just about to leave. When he walked to the doorway, he unhurriedly gave a sigh. Alas, His Highness Prince Jean doesn't want such an outstanding Qing'er. How could he have fallen for you, such a bad girl? Really incomprehensible for people. Fine, since you won't go. Su Shi immediately jumped up about a meter high, her head knocked against the bed pillar. It hurt so much that tears were about to come out. However, she simply did not have the time to deal with the pain. She threw herself directly toward Su Jingyu. Her face was so excited that the muscles were trembling. Older brother. What did you say just now? What was it that you said? Nothing, I didn't say anything. Su Jingyu spread out both hands and innocently shrugged his shoulders. Older brother. Both of Su Shi's hands clutched toward Su Jingyu's neck. She looked fierce and feigning anger, said, quickly speak, you want me to go mad from being so worked up. Su Jingyu somewhat helplessly let out a sigh. How could His Highness Prince Jean have such great charisma and allure? These girls from his family, every day, each and every one of them was aloof, icily arrogant, high and mighty to an extreme. They wouldn't by anyone's account, but once they come across His Highness Prince Jean, every single one of them would curl up like a little kitten that was exceedingly cute and well-behaved. Sure enough, that phrase was said correctly. Seeing His Highness Prince Jean, they would avoid previously arranged marriages. In fact, it wasn't only these girls, even father, mother and including him, would also not dare to breathe heavily in front of His Highness Prince Jean, right? It was clear, there was a type of people, at birth, their body had a kind of charisma that would make people acknowledge and serve them. Chapter 3:17, Returning to Su Manor, 17, Older Brother. If you don't tell me then I'll choke you to death. Su Shi's face was sullen, glaring very fiercely at Su Jingyu. She was so anxious that black smoke was nearly coming out of her forehead. Su Jingyu helplessly let out a sigh. Okay, older brother won't tease you anymore. His Highness Prince Jean really didn't fall for Qing'er. Everything from before was a misunderstanding. But the only thing that is certain, is that His Highness Prince Jean really took a fancy to a young lady from our residence. Every sentence Su Jingyu said, the light in Su Shi's eyes would shine a little more. She was so excited that her little face was the crimson color of blood, her lips were trembling non-stop. Su Jingyu spoilingly and indulgently rubbed her head. He continued to speak. You tell me, in our home apart, from Qing'er and you, who else is there? That is to say, since Qing'er has already been eliminated, therefore the only possibility is you. Now do you understand? Su Shi was dumbfounded. She was stupefied for a long time before regaining her senses. The corner of her mouth cracked open into a smile. Her smile got larger and larger, more and more brilliant. It appeared as if she was so happy she became an idiot. Older brother, are you telling the truth? Prince Jean really fell for me. He really wants me to become Princess Jean. Oh heavens! Right now, Su Shi's heart was bursting in joy. She felt that the entire sky was sunny and cloudless. The whole world all of a sudden became beautiful. Of course, apart from you, who else is there? Su Jingyu said, full of zest. As far as he was concerned, these two younger sisters, no matter who became Princess Jean, he would receive the same benefit. Oh heavens, the gods are too good to me, right? Oh heavens! Su Shi happily laughed in elation. She continuously twirled around in circles inside her room, so excited that she nearly went insane. Ouch! All of a sudden, a burst of miserable yell came from Su Shi's mouth. Right after, her whole body twisted and fell to the ground. The ground was covered in broken pieces and fragments of chinaware she had thrown. Immediately, her entire butt was pricked full of numerous cuts, fresh blood seeping out. Little Su Jingyu, with an aching heart, pulled her up with a solemn expression as he scolded her. You, this girl, how can you be so careless? Does it hurt? Su Shi was still smiling, she was smiling and grinning from ear to ear. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, doesn't hurt, it didn't hurt a bit. You, this girl. Kept smiling until you are stupid. Su Jingyu exasperatedly poked at her forehead. Su Shi, with one hand, pushed Su Jingyu away and turned around to immediately run towards the outside door. Older brother, I'm going to go see His Highness Prince Jean, take your time. Hey little Shi, wait for me. Su Jingyu called out loudly. However, before waiting for him to turn around, even the shadow of Su Shi's figure was already gone. Su Jingyu could only helplessly shake his head. Seeing Su Shi looking like this, Su Jingyu secretly sighed in his heart. His Highness Prince Jean had rejected Qing'er, not sure if this was a good thing or not. Speaking of Su Shi, she ran so fast, she was like a wisp of smoke and fast as lightning as she rushed towards the reception hall. Standing outside of the door, Su Shi very firmly inhaled a breath of air. She calmed down her excited frame of mind. Only then did she purse her lips and cover up the happy expression at the corner of her eye, and strolled right in. When Su Zian and Madame Su saw Su Shi enter, their hearts were especially complicated. Both of them gazed towards Su Shi with a troubled, heart-aching expression. Su Qing's pair of beautiful eyes rigidly glared at the approaching Su Shi, who was swaying gently with a womanly grace. That pair of eyes was as cold as a millennium-old block of ice, and also like 1,000 layers of the edges of icy blades. If her gaze could kill people, the Su Shi right now would have already died 1,000,000 times. Taking note of Su Qing's hateful and jealous gaze, Su Shi raised an eyebrow and slanted her a glance. Humph, since childhood, second older sister's gift, compared to hers, was always better. Even more, at such a young age, she had also paid her respects to a great teacher. If she hadn't returned, then it was tolerable, but once she returned, she immediately snatched away all the attention and the gazes that belonged to her. She still believed that she was a real peacock spreading its tail and that everyone would like her. Chapter 318, Returning to Su Manor, 18, Humph, since His Highness Prince Jean liked her, let her be jealous. Su Shi, who had always secretly hated Su Qing, now seemed to have made a comeback. She completely ignored Su Qing's feelings, on the contrary, the more painful it was for her, the more comfortable Su Shi's heart would be. Originally, a pair of blood sisters from the same father and mother normally was also on the same page in a very close relationship. However, because of one guy, animosity was born in the hearts of this pair of sisters. Su Shi swayed gently with glowing beauty as she moved in front of Prince Jean and made her salutations cutely. Nangong Luyun indifferently continued to drink his tea, basically giving no indication that he even noticed her. Su Shi's heart became anxious. Didn't older brother say His Highness Prince Jean was interested in her? How could he have this kind of attitude? Could it be that older brother had guessed wrong? No, it's not like this. It absolutely could not be like this. His Highness Prince Jean belonged to her. Su Shi hastened to squeeze out a trace of a smile on her stiff face. She cutely and kitten-like sashayed to in front of His Highness Prince Jean. She reached out her slender pale hand, wanting to hold His Highness Prince Jin's hand. However, before you know it, one could only see the flash of a shadow and Su Shi's figure was already hit all the way out the door. After a long while, a distant miserable shriek of pain could be heard from outside. Su Zian, Madame Su, Su Jingyu and also Su Qing, now, all of their eyes were opened very wide. They all stared in shock at that figure that was sent flying, and they were speechless for a very long time. Madame Su was very worried about the condition of Su Shi's injury. However, with His Highness Prince Jean present, everyone in the reception hall was enveloped in his chi field. She basically wouldn't even dare to breathe loudly, not to mention even leaving here halfway through. But, His Highness Prince Jean he unexpectedly hit Su Shi, directly sending her flying out. This simply was. Yet, Nangong Luyun was still unperturbed without a ripple and took another sip of tea. His tone was like the ice in a deep pool, ice cold to the bone. Su Zian, you birthed a good daughter. Ah. Su Zian's heart suddenly sank to the ground. He knew that this enigmatic and impossible to predict His Highness Prince Jean, in front of his eyes, was already getting a little angry. Only, no matter what, he couldn't guess right. His Highness Prince Jean descended on Su Manor and kept on saying he wanted to see Su Zian's daughter. But Qingya was refused. Xie was sent flying. In the end, who was it he wanted to see? Was giving a hint too much to ask? Su Zian was simply about to be overwrought from being pressed too hard. Your Highness, are you perhaps mistaken? Su Zian forced himself to step forward to reply. Since Qingya and Xie both are not the person you wanted to find, then that young lady you are looking for definitely is not in my home. Still hope that Your Highness Prince Jean investigates it thoroughly. Nangong Luyun leisurely took a sip of tea. In a calm and composed manner, he spoke. Su Zian, are you blaming this king for coming to your residence to make trouble without reason? His tone was like a soothing cloud and a gentle wind, downplaying every word. But for Su Zian's ears which heard these words, it seemed like a scorching thunderous lightning that was violently exploding in his mind. Su Zian knew that His Highness Prince Jean was displeased. However, these words of his were obviously spoken with good intentions. Why was it that His Highness still wasn't happy? This left him at a total loss. The pitiful him simply did not know, because he had inadvertently eliminated Su Luo. He was therefore confronted with a man who was now offended on Su Luo's behalf because he always became narrow-minded when it came to Su Luo. Su Zian hurriedly tried to explain himself, "Your Highness, this person really isn't trying to find fault with you. Rather, to tell you the truth, this person really only has these 2 daughters, and won't ever be able to find the person you are looking for." Nangong Luyun still gracefully sat there drinking tea. A chilliness flashed through his black eyes. He said a sentence with a tone that was light as a feather, "Su Zian, Su Zian, you, such a person, does not know when you are well off. This lifetime, I'm afraid you will carry a lifelong regret." Chapter 319, Returning to Su Manor, 19, Su Zian completely did not understand the meaning in the sentence that His Highness Prince Jin just said. He looked at Nangong Luyun with a perplexed expression, hoping that Prince Jin would say something to make it clearer. Nangong Luyun peacefully sat there. The joint in his fingers could be seen as he lightly pushed away the floating tea leaves inside the teacup with the lid. His eyes dropped slightly contentedly, saying, "You really just gave birth to only these 2 daughters that are wastes?" Nangong Luyun's tone, which was light as a feather, even carried a touch of smile, but in Su Zian's ears, when he heard these words, it made his soul shudder from the frost. Prince Jin called Su Qing and Su Shi wastes. This point Su Zian was unable to refute, because in front of Prince Jin's extraordinary and unsurpassed gifted genius, which person wasn't a waste? Only, what was the meaning of Prince Jin's words? Could it be he still had a worthy daughter he could bring out? Su Wan was already ruined. In this lifetime she could change her fortune. As for Su Luo. Don't know why all of a sudden the scene of Su Wan tattletaling to him on that day appeared in Su Zian's mind. That day, Su Wan ran over to his study to look for him, repeatedly stating that Su Luo escaped and run away from home, that she went together with His Highness Prince Jin to Sunset Mountain Range together. Later, because of insufficient proof, it resulted in him leaving this matter unsettled, but now. Suddenly, a thin line of perspiration appeared on Su Zian's forehead. Could it be that the person His Highness Prince Jin was looking for had always been Su Luo, and not Qing'er or Shi'er? No way, a giant mistake. Based on Qing'er and Shi'er's, this kind of genius, also being called wastes by His Highness Prince Jin, Su Luo, that kind of genuine good-for-nothing, how could she enter His Highness Prince Jin's eyes? This was simply a fantasy story like the Arabian Nights, absolutely impossible, simply absurd. However, His Highness Prince Jin was overbearing with an expression that said that if he didn't hand over the person, then he would massacre everyone in Su Manor. This attitude left Su Zian with no choice but to slant a meaningful glance towards Su Jingyu. "Didn't I tell you to go call over your younger sisters? Where's Luo'er? Where's Wan'er? No matter what, get those 2 girls to come over and let His Highness Prince Jin meet them. At that time, if he didn't like them, then wouldn't this matter be unrelated to Su Manor? Then, he would be able to send off this Azura from hell, right?" Today, Su Jingyu had suffered from a lot of very big shocks. First, he was certain Su Qing could become Princess Jin, but who knew that this dream would be shattered? Then, he was certain Su Shi could become Princess Jin. The result was once again that his hopes and efforts came to nothing. Instead, Su Shi was mercilessly thrown out. Now he was already stupefied, completely unable to understand the way that this enigmatic His Highness Prince Jin thought. Hearing Su Zian's loud scolding voice, Su Jingyu momentarily returned to his senses and stammeringly said, "Third younger sister and fourth younger sister's place, that place, I was afraid there wasn't enough time, so I ordered some servants to go and inform them. How about, I go there at once." Just at this time, the fragmented sounds of footsteps could be heard from outside. Everyone looked towards the doorway. Under the escort of a servant girl, Su Wan, who was in poor health, was helped inside. In the split second when everyone saw her, they couldn't help but to stare with their eyes wide open. Then, they turned their eyes away. In merely a very short time, Su Wan's entire person had completely changed. Before, her body was slim and graceful like the morning dew. Although one could not say she was at the peak, but she was also a rare beauty. However now, her entire person was extremely obese. Compared to her past look, it was like she had plumped up a full circle. While she was walking, the fat on her whole body was quivering. Oh heavens, was this still that slender and graceful Su Wan? Her now was basically a fat pig. It simply made people feel this scene was too pitiful to behold. Su Zian furtively looked at that aloof and remote His Highness Prince Jin. His Highness Prince Jin was as before, calmly drinking his tea. That indifferent appearance seemed to say that the person he wanted to find was obviously not Su Wan. Chapter 320, Returning to Su Manor, 20, also, the Su Wan who looked like a fat pig now, how could she be the person His Highness Prince Jin was looking for? If His Highness Prince Jin really selected this kind of Su Wan, then it simply was, that his eyes were blind. Su Zian disdainfully waved his hand. Carry her away now without delay, looking at her is bad luck. Daddy, immediately, tears rolled out of Su Wan's eyes. She threw off the servant girl's hand and she launched over to hug Su Zian's thigh. Daddy, save me, Daddy every day, this daughter would only drink water, but don't know why this daughter would become this fat. Quickly, you should think of a way to save this daughter, Daddy. Su Wan really couldn't understand, she simply did not eat many meals, yet how could this be the result, how could she change into the kind of appearance she had right now? Now, with great difficulty, she could see her father to allow her see the sky again. How could she lose this opportunity? Otherwise, she really would be ruined for this lifetime. Su Zian's expression was uncertain. With a frown, he said, His Highness Prince Jin is here, you give me to be quiet. People come, bring her away. Since she was not the person His Highness was looking for, he naturally would not be polite. What's even more, Su Wan, recalling the things he saw in that large fire from back then, he wished he could directly choke this daughter that disgraced him to death and forget about it. Su Wan, with great difficulty, was able to be released. Why would she give up so easily? One could only see her firmly hugging onto Su Zian's thigh. Hearing that His Highness Prince Jin was here, she turned around and complained tearfully towards Prince Jin, saying, Your Highness, I beseech you to persuade my respectable father, to invite an apothecary back to treat me. I really can't stand it anymore. I beg you. Nangong Luoyun finally put down his teacup with a smile that was not quite a smile as he raised an eyebrow. This person is? Su Zian forced a smile and said, incurring your highness's ridicule, this person is Su Wan. My third daughter. Only a few days ago, a little matter occurred, therefore, people come, hurry and bring third miss away. Under Su Zian's command, immediately, a group of extremely fierce and ugly servants approached. Holding on to Su Wan's hands and legs, they were just about to tow her away. Su Manor's third miss. All of a sudden, a dark intent flashed through Nangong Luoyun's mind. He unhurriedly lifted his hand. Wait. Such a soft short sentence, made these monster-like servants pause. They released Su Wan, doubtfully looking towards His Highness Prince Jin. After Su Wan broke away from the control of those people, she knew even her father was also unreliable. Consequently, she staggered along, throwing herself towards Nangong Luoyun, crawling and groveling on the ground. Choking with sobs, she said, Your Highness save me, I beg your Highness to save me. Now, all the important people seeing this was struck dumb. Could it be that His Highness Prince Jin really had interest in this fallen woman Su Wan that was as fat as a pig? If this matter was true, then His Highness Prince Jin's taste was rather too extreme, too heavy, right? Now everyone's gaze was focused on Nangong Luoyun's face, unblinkingly looking at him, deeply afraid of missing a trace of information. Nangong Luoyun faintly looked at Su Wan, his pair of beautiful eyes concealed wickedness and charm. Oh. Someone wants to harm you. Yes. Someone put poison in my food, otherwise, I absolutely would not become this fat within a few days. Your Highness, I beg you to say a few good words for me to my father. A few words from you is more powerful than the 1,000 words I would say. Su Wan's tears were packed, crying like the rain on pear flowers. Only, it was now a pity you couldn't make out a trace of beauty, matched to that extremely fat body. The more you looked, the more it would spoil a person's appetite. Contrary to what one might expect, His Highness Prince Jean was actually not scornful. Unexpectedly, he actually smiled. Nangong Liuyan's jointed finger at once fastened onto the loop on the armrest of the chair. He faintly smiled and raised an eyebrow. Maybe you made a mistake in some matters and received the proper punishment, right? Chapter 321, Returning to Su Manor, 21, No, not possible. Suddenly it seemed as if Su Wan had thought of something, and immediately, a thread of maliciousness flashed within her eyes. It's Su Luo, for sure, it is that little slut who poisoned me. Besides her, there's no one else. When talking about hate, in this lifetime, the person Su Wan hated the most precisely was Su Luo. In that moment, Nangong Liuyan's eyes were narrowed like a sharp blade. Immediately, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to have condensed into frost. A gust of cold air began to surge up from the soles of all of their feet. What's going on? At this moment, everybody in the reception hall was looking at each other in dismay. Why was it that all of a sudden, within the reception hall, the temperature seemed to have dropped a lot? It was a whiff of killing intent that was like a double-edged sword suspended over the top of their heads, making them feel as if they were all on tenterhooks. Nangong Liuyan was still gracefully sitting there as before, with a tone that was as light as a feather carrying a trace of his amiable manner. You said it is. Su Luo. His voice was gentle and languid, extremely pleasant to hear and had a nobleness that was hard to reach. Only, it was just that people familiar with him knew His Highness Prince Jean was about to start a carnage full of bloodletting. Yes. It is definitely her. At that time, she harmed me by destroying my reputation. Now, she still poisoned me until I became fat like this, such a cruel heart and a very malicious woman. Su Wan was so furious that it made her look sinister and nearly insane. Nangong Liuyan suddenly smiled. That smiling expression was even more gorgeous and resplendent than the cherry blossoms in March. He let out a faint sound in agreement and pondered with his chin in his hand. He unhurriedly and deliberately said, Indeed, as fat as a pig. Oh, not so, wouldn't this appearance be an insult to pigs? Once these words were spoke, Su Wan was immediately startled. She stupidly gazed at His Highness Prince Jean and was somewhat uncertain whether this person, the rumored legendary omnipotent His Highness Prince Jean, was standing on her side or not. The words he said were truly cutting, not sparing her feelings even the littlest bit. Nangong Liuyan leisurely fished out a single brown-colored medicinal pill and shook it in front of Su Wan. Anyway, isn't it just the condition of getting fat, the medicinal pill to detoxify it? This king has it right here, what? Immediately, Su Wan's pair of eyes gave off excited lights of extraordinary splendor. She had a very surprised and ecstatic expression as she stared at that piece of detoxifying medicinal pill. She looked like a dog entirely fixated on a bone with an unusually devout manner. This is the exact antidote. Su Wan was so moved that her lips were trembling. Nangong Liuyan's tone was very soft and gentle, also carrying a touch of smile. That's right, this is the exact antidote. It's just that after eating it, there is a very minor side effect. What side effects? Su Wan, having been mesmerized by the efficacy of this medicinal pill, totally did not notice the treacherous gleam that flashed through Nangong Liuyan's pair of ink-black eyes. Only after using it will you know. Nangong Liuyan drank a shallow mouthful of tea. His eyes had a smile that was not quite a smile expression, full of meaning that would make someone reel. His gaze was concealed, nefarious, and inscrutable. No matter what the side effects are, I beseech your Highness Prince Jean to bestow this medicine. If it can truly remove this poison, in the future, Su Wan would do whatever and work extremely hard to repay your highness. Su Wan's face was resolute, both of her hands were firmly clenched into fists. This was her last chance. Moreover, if she was able to stay by his highness's side, she would simply be flying to the top of the tree and transforming into a phoenix. The matter that made people feel strange was that the corner of Nangong Liuyan's mouth only hooked into an enigmatic, demonically charming smile. Without even haggling over the price, he tossed that medicinal pill to Su Wan. Su Wan took it. She didn't even use water and impatiently directly swallowed it in her excitement. Su Xian's group of people waited anxiously as they watched His Highness Prince Jin. No matter what, they couldn't understand why His Highness Prince Jin, with indeterminable mood swings, would treat Su Wan so differently. Could it be that he truly fancied Su Wan? But, it always felt that somewhere was strange. Su Xian kneeled down with deep gratitude, said, "Your Highness's favor in bestowing the medicine, your favor is so great, that this person will remember for as long as I live." Chapter 322, Returning to Su Manor, 22, Nangong Liuyan carelessly waved his hand, stopping Su Xian's false words of courtesy. A weird and sly smiling expression appeared on his mouth. General Su really will remember this as long as he lives. It's just that words of thanks for this king are not necessary. Huh? Su Xian was even more confused. In the end, what was His Highness Prince Jin playing at? But speaking of Su Wan, once she ate the medicinal pill, afterwards, the effect of the drug very quickly appeared. The body that was originally as fat as a pig became like a punctured balloon. In front of their eyes, it very quickly slimmed down. In less than a quarter of an hour, the fat across her whole face and all over her body, without exception, actually disappeared without a trace. Once again, she regained the beautiful, slender body from before. Unexpectedly, the skin on her face was even better than before, exquisite and glossy. Her skin was like amber. Within the reception hall, everyone was watching this scene with a mystified expression. They were speechless from amazement. His Highness Prince Jin had carried this medicinal pill on his body, and also just gave such a treasure of a medicinal pill to Su Wan. Then, Su Wan was the person His Highness was looking for. A complicated emotion flitted across Su Xian's heart. If he knew that the person His Highness fancied was Su Wan, before, no matter what, he would not treat her like this. Only, now there should still be time to remedy it. Having thought up to here, Su Xian squeezed out a trace of a smiling expression on his rigid face. Smiling towards Su Wan, he said, "Why haven't you quickly gone to thank His Highness? If His Highness hadn't bestowed the medicine, the rest of your life would have been ruined. Yes, Wanner, from now on, you should properly follow His Highness. You are not allowed to be mischievous again." The corner of Madame Su's mouth squeezed out a stiff smile. Her smile was very unnatural. Su Jingyu also gave a forced smile and stepped forward to curry favor. "Third younger sister, in the future when you are living a good life, don't forget your older brother, oh." Su Wan arrogantly swept them a glance. These people, when she was down and out, they kept hitting her when she was down. They were even wishing that she could have died earlier. Now that they knew His Highness adored her, each and every one of them actually came over to fawn on her. Humph! They thought that she could still forgive them. Su Wan haughtily raised her chin and with a few steps, she walked to Nangong Liuyan's side. Then, she said in a cute and clever voice, "Father, daughter is already His Highness's people. From now on, matters in Su Manor doesn't have the least bit of relation to me." No matter what, Su Xian also did not expect for her to say this kind of stuff in front of everyone. Originally, he thought that although Su Wan would have some resentment in her heart, still, she had been brought up in Su Manor for more than 10 years, after all. Overall, she should have some feelings, but he never thought she would repay with such ingratitude. Su Xian's expression, in a split second, had threads of anger. "Wanner, what are you saying? Also, quickly come over here." "I won't." Su Wan said with the confidence of being right, and stood by Nangong Liuyan's side. She arrogantly and bossily glared at these people that had once turned their backs on her. A malicious light appeared in her eyes. What made people baffled was that regardless of what disturbance occurred in his surroundings, Nangong Liuyan only indifferently sipped his tea, completely lacking any interest in interfering. Was he indulging Su Wan, or simply that he couldn't be bothered enough to care? Because they couldn't grasp His Highness Prince Jin's attitude, therefore, Su Xian's heart had some misgivings, so he wouldn't dare to go up and forcefully pull Su Wan. His face blackened, but he could only furiously yell, "Su Wan, don't forget that no matter what, your last name is still Su." Su Wan saw that just now, when she said she was His Highness Prince Jin's person, this sentence, His Highness Prince Jin did not refute it. This gave her inexhaustible confidence and faith. One could see her sneer grimly repeatedly, "Last name is Su. You think I would really want such a nauseating family name that makes people sick? Su Wan, you are extremely daring, don't tell me you are not afraid of being disciplined by the family ancestors." Su Jingyu didn't expect that once Su Wan got power, she would immediately not recognize people, thus with a cold face and a furious tone, he yelled. Chapter 323, Returning to Su Manor, 23, Disciplined by the Family Ancestors. Ha ha ha, what laughable discipline by family ancestors. When I was suffering all kinds of torment, where was that ancestor? And where were all of you? Each and every one of you observed coldly like bystanders, throwing rocks at me who was down, wishing that I would drop dead. Since it is like this, Su Wan's gaze swept over all of their faces, and finally, her eyes flashed with a touch of resolute radiance. Since it is like this, then, not having the last name of Su is fine. From now on, Su Wan does not have any relationship with your Su family. Don't ever come looking for me again. As soon as those words were out, Su Xian's complexion immediately darkened. Su Wan's aggressiveness caused Su Xian to feel that he had lost face. He, as a stately great general that protected the nation, was a person high above, with 10,000 people underneath. He was actually forced to these circumstances by a concubine's daughter. How could he have the prestige to stand facing his colleagues? How could he have the face to lead several tens of thousands of military forces? How could he have the prestige to be the master of the household? Su Xian pointed at Su Wan and angrily roared, "Good, these words were what you said. People come, bring me the family genealogy record." Su Xian flung his sleeves while panting in rage, his complexion was ashen. Very quickly, a servant came holding the family genealogy records. Su Xian saw Su Wan with her chin lifted arrogantly, standing by His Highness Prince Jin's side. That unrepentant appearance of hers suddenly added more anger to his fury. "Su Wan, again, I will give you one last chance. You really want to separate yourself from the Su family?" Now, Madame Su's thoughts were very complicated. She also naturally wished to have Su Wan expelled very far away, so as to avoid seeing this annoyance. But, her identity as the main mistress of Su Manor, when Su Xian was in a rage, in the capacity of the main mistress in charge of the family, she ought to come out and console everyone. Madame Su gently pulled at Su Xian's arm, with a soft voice, persuaded him by saying, "General, take a break, how great of a matter is expelling from the family. How could you make such a decision when in a rage? In the future, when you recall this, you certainly will regret it." Su Xian slowly released a breath, gloomily and coldly glared towards Su Wan. How could he want to expel Su Wan from the family? Let alone under the circumstances when His Highness Prince Jin's attitude was unclear. But Su Wan was really too offensive. Su Wan coldly smiled, "Madame Su, you also should stop faking your kindness. Who doesn't know that right now, you wish you could choke me to death? Ha ha ha, General Su, you should still strike off my name from the family genealogical records without delay. You still believe I really care for it?" Su Wan kept on saying Madame Su and General Su, clearly acting as if they were not her father and mother. Suddenly, a mouthful of anger bubbled up in Su Zian, his pair of eyes was opened very wide, itching to choke Su Wan to death. Good, very good. This was your own choice. In the future, if you were to die outside, Su Manor will absolutely not stick up for you. Su Zian, under a raging temper, with one grab, took the family genealogical records. On Su Wan's page, he crossed it off with dense brush strokes again and again, eliminating her name thoroughly from the family genealogical records. In the course of this process, Su Wan continued to lift her chin up in an icily arrogant manner. She cast sidelong glances at these people that had stepped on her with the soles of their feet. No, still missing one. Su Wan was very dissatisfied with this. Now, once again, the sounds of footsteps could be heard from outside. The servants lifted up the curtain, and people could only see a young woman with delicate and pretty features walk in from outside of the door. One only saw her body covered in a light green muslin dress that swept the floor like a circling butterfly. Her beautiful, jet-black hair was tied up with a light-colored ribbon. Her face was not covered with cosmetics, but was fresh, clean and quite moving. Her pair of eyes was like water, with a clear and natural, light gaze. Her stride was steady with a natural and relaxed bearing as she slowly walked over. It gave people a kind of fresh, clean and quick-witted impression that illuminated her brilliantly. This person was not an outsider, she was Su Luo. She saw everyone and her mouth burst open into a shallow, indifferent smile. Chapter 324, Returning to Su Manor, 24, Now, her bearing was natural and relaxed, where was she still that cowering, good-for-nothing Su Luo? She had practically changed beyond recognition, as if she was reborn. When Nangong Luyun saw Su Luo, that pair of malicious eyes momentarily transformed. It was now intoxicating, full of tender sentiments and gleaming like rays reflecting off water. That smile could stir up and entice all living things. Originally, Su Luo didn't want to come since she never liked to participate in this kind of spectacle. However, hearing what the servant who was sent to invite her said about the events that occurred in the reception hall, she had no choice but to come. If she didn't come, who knew if Nangong Luyun would directly draw up an engagement contract with her cheap father and send her away with the agreement, okay? This kind of thing, she could only control it well if she was personally at the scene. Seeing Su Luo come over, the corner of Su Qing's mouth hooked up coldly. When Su Wan saw Su Luo, the hatred in her eyes was very obvious. Without waiting for others to speak, she suddenly took a big stride and rushed towards Su Luo. She raised her slapping palm high, "Slut, you still dare to come? I'll kill you." However, confronted with a first-rank Su Wan, Su Luo effortlessly and easily turned sideways and was able to avoid her. Still remember that the last time when she fought Su Wan, she didn't even have one iota of spirit power. But her now was already a third rank, really, after a lapse of 3 days, she made people sit up and take notice. Su Wan didn't expect that she couldn't even hit Su Luo, making her so angry that she stomped her foot. If you have the ability, then don't run. Today, I simply must kill you. Su Luo, with both hands holding her arms, sneered while casting her a sidelong glance. Want to kill me? Just based on your skills? Su Wan wanted to kill her now, that was basically a task that was impossible for her to accomplish. Unexpectedly, when Su Wan heard these words, she merely smiled coldly and said, "Su Luo, I already know you practiced martial arts. Now, I have revealed it through my test. You concealed it from everyone and secretly cultivated, in the end, what are you plotting?" Su Luo actually knew martial arts. Su Zian was immediately stupefied. Wasn't this girl a good-for-nothing? When she was at the spirit-testing temple, didn't she test with not even a bit of spirit strength? How could she possibly cultivate then? But watching her avoid Su Wan's attack just a moment ago, she really did know martial arts. Moreover, her cultivation wasn't that low. In the end, what was going on? Su Zian was bewildered. Not only Su Zian, Su Jingyu and others were also bewildered, except for Su Qing. Because not long ago, she had just fought with Su Luo, so she could clearly see through her strength. Although Su Luo's cultivation among people of her age was pretty good, yet she still couldn't be compared to herself. Therefore, she was somewhat disdainful of Su Luo. Su Luo causally swept a glance at Su Zian, seeing that he had a surprised expression, she nonchalantly said, "I was merely waiting for the right moment to give father a nice surprise, what possible plot could there be?" Su Zian, hearing this, his overly sensitive heart that was harmed just a moment ago by Su Wan, was healed. He was over the moon with joy. Yes, Su Wan, that selfish and loathsome girl was driven out of the family, then forget it. Now, Luo girl was no longer a good-for-nothing, so he once again gained another daughter. As it turned out, before, he had never viewed Su Luo as his daughter. Su Wan saw that driving a wedge between them didn't work, so she changed to another method, sneeringly said, "Even if I am not able to beat you, so what? Su Luo, look clearly, now I am His Highness Prince Jin's people. If I ask people to kill you, who would dare to object?" She, Su Wan, now had a backer. Also, this backer was powerful and unsurpassed. If she didn't kill Su Luo today, she vowed not to let go. Su Wan secretly swore an oath in her heart. His Highness Prince Jin's people. Su Luo had one hand holding her arm and the other hand holding her chin in a pondering posture. Her eyes were flowing with light and brilliant colors, faintly smiling at Nangong Luyun while lifting an eyebrow. "Nangong Luyun, is she really your people?" Once these words came out, immediately everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Chapter 325, Returning to Su Manor, 25, Su Luo had gone insane. She actually dared to directly call His Highness Prince Jin by his given name, that was a taboo. Moreover, she also used that kind of arrogant tone that sounded quite disdainful. She actually dared to use this kind of attitude to speak to His Highness Prince Jin, simply did not want to live. Just a moment ago, Su Zian had viewed Su Luo in a new favorable light, now, he was itching to beat this daughter who had just popped up to death. He had said it before, not well-mannered enough to bring out in public, just could not be brought out in public. She didn't even understand a little bit of etiquette. Su Zian immediately kneeled on the ground in reverence and fear, and kowtowed to beg for forgiveness. "Your Highness, please calm your anger, Su Luo, she is ignorant, her mind is not very bright. Normally, she is always erratic and uncivil, she doesn't think before she speaks. Your Highness, you must by all means not lower yourself to her level." Su Zian was begging for forgiveness on one hand, while on the other hand, he wished he could directly strike Su Luo dead. This pest of a spirit that harmed people, did she not know, that very possibly just because of this sentence, in an instant, the entire Su Manor would be a bloodbath. Su Zian saw His Highness Prince Jin had no reaction since the beginning, couldn't help but to take a furtive look towards him. But he only saw that remote and aloof His Highness Prince Jin, that was always calmly drinking tea with an uninterested expression that lacked any emotion. It was as if the matters taking place around him had nothing to do with him. Seeing this, Su Zian's mind became even more anxious. He lifted his hand, grabbing towards Su Luo, "Loathsome girl, why haven't you already quickly kneeled down to beg for forgiveness from His Highness?" Who knew that this grab of his would actually come up empty? Then when he lifted his eyes to look, he found that now, he had already lost sight of Su Luo's figure. At this moment, Su Luo had already moved to Nangong Liuyun's side with her quick steps. This high and mighty person towering above very unhappily glared down at her. Su Zian, upon seeing this, could only feel his mind darken. It was a scorching thunderous lightning that exploded, splitting open his brain. Oh heavens, this loathsome girl simply was leading Su Manor directly on the road to extinction. She actually still dared to stick her hands at her waist and glower at His Highness Prince Jin. At this moment it was not only Su Zian, there was also Su Jingyu and Madame Su kind of people. They were all looking at Su Luo with a dumbfounded expression. Rays of extreme fear flashed through their eyes. Because this action of Su Luo's, in their eyes, appeared to be simply too brazen, too disgraceful, and too much like courting death. Su Wan pushed Su Luo with a very displeased expression. Why did you come over here? The one His Highness Prince Jin fancies is me and not you, get lost. Saying this, Su Wan very rudely lifted her palm to slap towards Su Luo's face. Su Luo casually extended her hand, effortlessly and with great ease, she captured Su Wan's moving hand. She cast her a quick glance with smile that was not quite a smiling expression. Someone just like you, Nangong Luyun would actually fancy you? Su Wan, don't forget, the you right now is a fallen woman, oh. Your body was already sullied by another man, oh. You, Su Wan was extremely angry, this matter was something she could not bear to recollect. Now, it was laid bare and revealed in front of everyone by Su Luo. Su Luo, it was you, right? That affair was you who did it, right? A crazy malicious radiance shone from Su Wan's eyes. On that day, that killer was clearly going to your courtyard to rape you, this slut. However, finally, in an unfathomable, mysterious way, he appeared on top of my bed. Furthermore, you know martial arts, you obviously knows martial arts, and not at a low level either. It was you, clearly it was you. Su Luo, you slut, you ruined me. I want to kill you. Even if Su Wan was not completely right, but her guess was pretty close. On that day, it really was Su Luo who had set up that maneuver. It was also Su Luo who had reversed their roles and drugged her. At this moment, Su Wan's rage was difficult to manage, she was making threatening gestures to Su Luo and was about to claw at Su Luo's face. But now, her martial arts ability just couldn't be compared to Su Luo's. Therefore, Su Luo easily and effortlessly flung her away, as if throwing away a coarse sack. Chapter 326, Returning to Su Manor, 26, Su Wan was flung to the ground. It hurt so much tears were about to come out of her eyes. However, her hatred had already blinded her eyes. She knew that the her right now was no match for Su Luo. Moreover, the her right now had already broken away from Su Manor. Therefore, Su Zian and his people simply would not stick up for her again. What to do? No, she still had Prince Jin, His Highness Prince Jin would help her. She was already His Highness Prince Jin's people now, wasn't she? He would even bestow such a precious medicinal pill to her. Why wouldn't he help her again to kill such a little minor person like Su Luo? As a result, Su Wan didn't have time to deal with the pain. Crawling and moving towards His Highness Prince Jin, she complained tearfully, Your Highness, I beseech you, help me kill Su Luo, that little slut. As long as you kill her, in the future, regardless of what you want me to do, I am completely willing. I beg you to help me avenge this hatred. Su Wan wept like a pear blossom in the rain. Right now, she truly had some delicate fragile beauty that made the heart of people watching feel tenderness towards her. However, it was a pity, she was wrong. She was wrong from the onset, moreover, she was outrageously wrong. Alas! Nangong Luyun finally put down the teacup in his hand, his gaze landed on Su Wan's body light as a feather. His intoxicating pair of eyes carried a touch of a smiling expression, seemingly ridiculing and mocking. He leisurely repeated what she said, kill Su Luo on your behalf. Su Wan thought that His Highness Prince Jin had already agreed. Immediately, her grief turned into happiness. Many thanks to your highness, many thanks for your highness's help to accomplish this. After she was finished thanking His Highness Prince Jin, Su Wan immediately turned her head around and sinisterly stared at Su Luo with a cold and malicious smile said, Little slut, you will die for sure. Indeed, people that His Highness Prince Jin was set on would always die very tragically, quite inhumanely. Both of Su Luo's hands were holding her arms, and with a faint smile, she cast sidelong glances at Nangong Luyun. Oh, His Highness Prince Jin's charismatic beauty really is limitless. In the beginning, I heard people say you had deep feelings for second elder sister and that it was serious. Afterwards again, rumors spread that you were infatuated with fifth younger sister. Now, what's this? You won't even let Su Wan, a fallen woman, slip by. Hiss! Everybody at the scene inhaled a cold breath of air. Brave, too brave, simply full of bravery. This absolutely was the #1 bravest person since the beginning of history. This absolutely was the first time since the beginning of history that someone dared to speak like this to His Highness Prince Jin. Su Zian saw Nangong Luyun slowly stand up, his heart was extremely plaintive and aggravated. Finished, 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 Su Manor was about to be done for. However, Nangong Luyun's movements afterward surprised him until his chin almost dropped to the ground. He only saw that remote and aloof, godlike Nangong Luyun smilingly rubbed Su Luo's head. Oh, this King's Luo girl is jealous, really hard to come by. His Highness Prince Jin's devilishly charming voice also carried a touch of tender sentiments. That tone clearly had hints of a spoiling, indulging and conniving expression. In addition, there was also his ecstatic address of her as, this King's Luo girl. At this moment, in all directions around, it was quiet. It was so quiet that the people watching could hear the sound of each other's heartbeat. This was because this situation was really too strange, so strange that everyone was incredulous. They were all staring outrageously at the couple in front of their eyes who were like a pair of jade annulus. However, what made them even more stunned was what was still to come. They only saw Su Luo directly step on his foot. Her tone was ice cold as she said, "Who is your Luo girl?" "In your dreams." "Humph, you are such a womanizer, attracting the bees and butterflies, one on the left and another on the right non-stop." Su Luo, she stepped on His Highness Prince Jin's foot. It was absolutely the truth, because on His Highness Prince Jin's black leather boots, there was clearly a distinct mark of a footprint. His Highness Prince Jin that was just stepped on, this time ought to get angry, right? Everyone present all looked towards His Highness Prince Jin expectantly. Su Luo deserved to die, too deserving of death. She actually went and stepped on His Highness Prince Jin's foot? Could it be that she didn't know, the thing that annoyed His Highness Prince Jin the most, greatest, and utterly, was when someone stepped on his foot, okay? Chapter 327, Returning to Su Manor, 27, however. Against everyone's expectations, His Highness Prince Jin didn't get angry at all. His Highness Prince Jin not only didn't get angry, on the contrary, he even smiled dim-wittedly. His face was full of happiness and bliss. Yes, that's right, it was exactly a blissful, happy and silly smile. This smile appeared on the face of His Highness Prince Jin, that was like Yama, the king of hell, ice-cold and unsympathetic. Moreover, his voice clearly carried a thread of currying favor with her and a trace of childishness, acting like a spoiled little boy. This King's Luo girl has just felt jealous. Just listen to the words he said, simply too childish. People who heard this almost had goosebumps. This basically was not that savage and callous His Highness Prince Jin that was from their impression. Clearly, he had completely changed into another person. However, Su Luo still hadn't bought into his act and unrestrainedly, she directly sat on the chair he was just sitting on. She took the teacup, and before she could pour the tea, His Highness Prince Jin had earlier already grasped the teapot and proceeded to politely pour the tea for her. His voice was extremely gentle and tender. "The tea is somewhat cold, drink less of it, later, this king will personally boil tea for you to drink." Su Luo snappily glared at him. "Again, you want to tempt and coax me to go over? Definitely not listening to your deception. Where would I dare to deceive you? How about this king carry you over in a palanquin with 8 bearers?" Nangong Luyun smiled roguishly while moving closer to her. "Dream on, you, move away from me." Su Luo glared at him and she pushed him away from in front of her eyes. The two of them acted as if no one else was present, going back and forth in a tit-for-tat. This was how they would normally interact with each other. However, in the eyes of the people nearby, this was too much of a shock. This was already something that words could not be used to describe. Su Zian unwaveringly stared at the two people in front of his eyes who seemed to be chatting about trivial things. His brain went blank and was frozen. It seemed as if his thought process had forgotten how to keep turning. Su Jingyu had his mouth opened wide, so surprised that he was simply godsmacked. Madame Su's pair of eyes flashed with malicious rays. The embroidered handkerchief in her hand was nearly torn to shreds. The eyes Su Qing used to look at Su Luo had a deep and cold killing intent. The one who found it hardest to accept was really Su Wan. She already didn't have Su Manor as a way out. The only person she could rely on for support was His Highness Prince Jean. But now, His Highness Prince Jean was exchanging flirtatious glances with Su Luo. However, just a moment ago, she had clearly asked His Highness Prince Jean to go kill Su Luo. This simply was. Now, the complicated mood in Su Wan's heart simply could not be described by words. She merely thought that she was about to go insane. No way, His Highness Prince Jean was hers. She absolutely could not let Su Luo snatch him away, absolutely would not permit it. Su Wan, staggering along, climbed up from the ground. From the hair on top of her head, she pulled out a sharp, thin hairpin and directly stabbed towards Su Luo's throat. Slut, I want to kill you. Su Wan was aggressive and her eyes had a malicious and crazy light. With her disheveled hair, she looked somewhat malevolent and terrifying. However, without waiting for her to get closer, when Su Luo still hadn't reacted, Nangong Luyun directly flapped his sleeves and swept Su Wan far, far away. Bang! One could only hear a violent crashing sound. Su Wan's entire person was gravely flung into the wall. The strength was so great that almost the entire room was shaking. Under normal circumstances, it's only correct that she ought to slide down along the smooth wall. But, since it was His Highness Prince Jean that acted, it just wouldn't be that simple. One could only see that His Highness Prince Jin's strength had actually directly made Su Wan smash into the wall, forming a person-shaped deep indentation. Su Wan simply could not even fall down, her entire person, in that manner, hung on the wall. Cough, 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 Su Wan repeatedly coughed. One mouthful of blood after another burst out, seemingly as if it doesn't cost money coming from her mouth. After directly vomiting out more than 10 mouthfuls of blood, she was barely able to stop it. Chapter 328, Returning to Su Manor, 28. Now, Su Wan's complexion was as white as paper. It seemed like she had only a flimsy thread of breath left and she looked exceedingly weak. It seemed possible that with the very next breath, she would die. Nobody dared to step forward to lift Su Wan down from the wall. First, because it was His Highness Prince Jean who had acted, and second, it was because Su Wan had already broken away from the Su family. So as far as they were concerned, she was only an outsider now. For what reason? Su Wan weakly opened her mouth to ask. While she was speaking, another mouthful of blood violently sprayed out. A loud, thump sound rang out when her body tumbled to the floor. She almost passed out due to the severity of the pain from the fall. Nangong Liuyun's gaze was lazy and devilishly charming. He cast an indifferent sidelong glance at her. For what reason? Your Highness is treating me like this, just a moment ago, didn't you say? I am your Highness's woman, Su Wan's pair of eyes stared fixedly at Nangong Luyun. Her breath was feeble as she stared at him. Just now everything was going well, but ever since Su Luo appeared, everything changed afterwards. Nangong Luyun started to laugh softly, his pair of peerless black eyes was completely apathetic. When did this king acknowledge you as this king's people? What? Did His Highness Prince Jean actually never acknowledge this point? It was not just Su Wan, almost everyone present was stunned as they stared at Nangong Luyun who was pulling Su Luo to stand by his side. A sarcastic arc arose on his peerless, handsome face. That's right, thinking back, a moment ago, it was only Su Wan who was saying those words by herself. In fact, from start to finish, His Highness Prince Jean never did acknowledge her, but Your Highness also never denied her claims either. For what reason would he do this? Recalling His Highness Prince Jin's conduct and deeds toward Su Wan just now, everyone felt was somewhat weird. Finally, it was still Nangong Luyun who helped clear up their confusion. And in passing, letting Su Wan become an enlightened ghost. Nangong Luyun, whose position was high above, looked down with a penetrating gaze that radiated an ice-cold light. He smiled with not quite a smile while lifting an eyebrow. Before, the water that you drank was especially sweet, am I right? Su Wan was bewildered as she looked at Nangong Luyun with uncertainty. How could His Highness Prince Jean even know of this? Could he have cared about her this much? Nangong Luyun smiled sinisterly and charmingly while continuing his explanation. When you sleep, it's especially deep and you always have nightmares, am I right? Su Wan had a startled expression as she stared at Nangong Luyun. Obesity poison, said Nangong Luyun with clear, bright and mesmerizing obsidian eyes. His black pupils that concealed a hawk-like gaze were sharp and cutting. He continued with the confidence of his convictions, as if everything was his by right, that was the elixir that this king had dispatched people to secretly poison you with. What? The person who poisoned Su Wan was actually His Highness Prince Jean. Why would he do this? What hatred did he have for Su Wan? Wasn't directly killing her the same? Why would he torment her like this? Everybody was terrified and awed by this admission. Su Wan was immediately stunned stupid. She would never have expected that it was actually His Highness Prince Jean who poisoned her. Furthermore, he also revealed this news in a tone that was as if it was right and expected. For what reason? Before this, she basically had never really seen His Highness Prince Jean, let alone having offended him. Even if she had offended him, he could just have her killed directly in response. Why would he waste so much effort to arrange this? For what reason? Nangong Luyun smiled faintly, such a forgetful Mississippi. Could it be that you forgot the matter from before of going to the mercenary union to issue a task? The matter of issuing a task. Su Xian's eyelids jumped. At that time, hadn't they suspected Su Luo for issuing that task? Why was it that now, in a blink of an eye, it had changed into being Su Wan? In the end, how was this matter related? His pair of malicious eyes was tightly fixed on Su Wan, trying to find any clue on her face. Now, Su Wan's eyes shrank back, cowering in fear. She didn't expect that this matter would actually be known by His Highness Prince Jean. Chapter 329, Returning to Su Manor, 29, But what I issued was to have a man rape Su Luo. Yet towards you, Su Wan's gaze slid down and saw that his large palm was holding firmly onto Su Luo's hand. Suddenly, she was shocked. Could it be that His Highness Prince Jean was taking revenge for Su Luo? Oh heavens, but this was impossible. How could the stately and majestic Prince Jean take revenge for that Su Luo who was a good-for-nothing? This kind of trivial matter shouldn't even enter his judicious eyes. Alas, such a pitiful child. Nangong Luyun sighed. A rolled-up paper flew out from his sleeves and smashed on top of Su Wan's head. He understatedly said, "Take it, examine it well, this is the method you are about to die from." This sentence of death from His Highness Prince Jin's mouth was as simple as eating food or drinking water. Even the venerable Beichening had received his proper punishment. How could a lowly person like Su Wan escape? People that were involved in this matter, except for Beichening, were all without exception ruthlessly dealt with by Nangong Luyun. Su Wan was trembling and simply did not dare to open that task form sheet. It was something she had personally signed. How could she not know what was written inside? At that time, they wrote 3 copies of this agreement. One copy was filed away in the mercenary union, another in the hands of the killer, and the final copy was in her own hands. She had already destroyed the copy in her hands long ago. This copy now, should have been seized from the mercenary union. The venerable Baichen Ing from the mercenary union was His Highness Prince Jin's people. If she had known earlier that Su Luo and His Highness Prince Jin had something to do with each other, she would never have gone to the mercenary union. No matter how you said it, it was thousands and tens of thousands she should not have. She should never have set herself against Su Luo. A clear line of remorseful tears rolled down Su Wan's face. With a trembling voice, she said, "Your Highness Prince Jin is very calculating, laying down such a great scheme. First, you made me utterly isolate myself by having my name struck off from the family genealogy records. Subsequently, you proceeded to tell the truth about this matter, making me suffer so much pain and grief, that I would be better off dead. Very brilliant strategy. Since that obesity poison was put in place by His Highness Prince Jin, then that medicinal pill. This medicinal pill will make your body send out a rare perfume, even after your death, so your corpse will still be very alluring. Well, of course, only as far as magical beasts are concerned." Nangong Luyun held his chin in a contemplative posture, saying the truth in a manner that was full of good intentions. "That's right, after death, her corpse must be torn apart by magical beasts. Gnawed upon until even the skeleton would be gone." This was indeed what she wrote for this task. Su Wan recalled up to here, she then immediately fainted from fear and despair. "Drag her away, carry it out according to the original plan." Nangong Luyun carelessly waved his hand. Immediately, a bodyguard came forward from among the guards at his back. Like a fierce tiger, he rushed towards Su Wan. He carried her over his shoulder and in a flash, he had already left Su Manor, darting towards the vast, great mountains. Su Manor, the reception hall. When all the people present saw Su Wan being carried away, without exception, they felt chills down their spines. His Highness Prince Jin had deep thoughts and planned ahead. He handled matters as he pleased without the slightest scruple, moreover, his methods were cruel and bloody. People simply could not bear to see it. He clearly could have just straight out killed Su Wan, but he would not. He insisted on planning it step by step, making Su Wan experience again and again the despair of going from heaven to hell. Only after he finished playing did he let her know it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Making sure that even after death, she would not be able to have an intact corpse. Su Zian only felt that he couldn't keep his lips from trembling. This kind of Prince Jin was simply too terrifying. However, his gaze stopped and fixed on the hand His Highness Prince Jin used to hold Su Luo. This time ought to be the real one, right? Truth be told, Su Zian was already scared silly. From Su Qin to Su Shi, from Su Shi to Su Wan, and once more from Su Wan to Su Luo. His, Su Zian's, 4 daughters appeared one, followed closely by another, only to be rejected one after another. Chapter 330, Playboy, 1, Su Luo really never thought that Nangong Luyun would go to this extent just for her. Since the beginning, he had set up this scheme to trap Su Wan, advancing step by step and trapping her more with every step. First, he had let her reach heaven, and then he threw her down from such great height. Following that, he once again lifted her up to the heavens to once more threw her down from that great height. She was half dead from falling the second time, and only then did he tell her the truth. Afterwards, he made her face the way she was about to die while she was still alive. She was a nobody, yet among the population, he would actually go to this extent just for her. People were not vegetables. If one were to say that Su Luo's heart wasn't a little bit moved, that would be impossible. Nangong Luyun glanced back and saw that Su Luo looked dazed as she gazed at him, her pair of eyes carried an affectionate regard. A touch of joy flashed across his face, and with a spoiling and indulgent manner, he hooked the tip of her nose with his finger. "This king's little princess is really moved this time, right? You should be reassured that after our marriage, this king will treat you even better. Do you believe me when I say that I will spoil you to the sky?" "I don't believe it." Su Luo snappily glared at him. How could this person be so thick-skinned? "Then you should marry this king and try it." Nangong Luyun used a wheedling, childish tone while tugging at Su Luo's little hand. His face was covered in a pitiful expression. Not going to marry you, Su Luo shook off his hand. Nangong Luyun's face had a wounded expression and he looked at Su Luo with some recrimination. Such a heartless girl, we have already shared the same bed, how can you be like this and not take responsibility? Once these words were out, the people in Su Manor who had originally been gaping blankly at their interaction were all once again dumbfounded. The 3 veins on Su Luo's forehead bulged and pulsated. She quickly turned her head around and glared at Nangong Luyun. She bit down hard on her teeth and stressing every syllable to say, I demand that you shut up. She just knew it. She just knew that he would not let last night's matter be so easily swept under the rug. However, she never would have thought that this shameless guy would actually do this under thousands of pairs of eyes and in front of everyone's face. Saying this kind of words. What was called sharing the same bed? They had merely been covered in blankets and were simply chatting, okay? What was called taking responsibility? Had she really done anything to him? The little her in Su Luo's heart was about to be driven mad. Nangong Luyun would never be satisfied with small gains. His moist, glossy, liquid-like red lips were alluringly hot. His bright, limpid, peach blossom-like eyes looked at Su Luo with reproach. The accusation in his eyes was so obvious, it made people feel like Su Luo was a bad woman that had arbitrarily used him, then had indiscriminately discarded him. Su Zian was nearly shocked with disbelief. He looked at the scene in front of his eyes with a shocked and stupefied expression. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't believe it. No way, no way, no way. How could this man that was feigning pitifulness to get some sympathy be His Highness Prince Jin, that evildoer? Absolutely not him. It was absolutely impossible. Su Zian got his act together, then let out a slight coughing sound. Your Highness Prince Jin. Without completing the sentence, he had interrupted the Nangong Luyun who was in the midst of brewing an affectionate mood. His eyes coldly swept toward Su Zian. It was like blocks of ice which had successfully condensed for millennium. Immediately, the last part of the sentence that Su Zian had wanted to say froze in his throat. He was unable to say another word. How extremely complicated was Su Zian's mood in his mind right now, only he would know. All these years, he had always regarded Su Luo as a good-for-nothing. He never once cared about her one bit. However, in the end, he would never have expected that His Highness Prince Jin, whom he had tried very hard to curry favor with, would actually treat Su Luo favorably. No, not merely treating her favorably, His Highness Prince Jin was spoiling and indulgent towards Su Luo, to the point of having no bounds. He was almost at the point of seeing, hearing and obeying her to whatever extent she desired. Only, was this real? Or was this merely another scheme of His Highness Prince Jin, wanting to deceive other people and putting on this false facade? Su Zian had no choice but to have this kind of suspicion because of self-doubt. Because just a moment ago, that series of events was sufficient to prove how enigmatic His Highness Prince Jin was, with entirely unpredictable mood swings. Chapter 331, Playboy, 2. Since the start, Su Qing had stood quietly aside, watching the melodrama unfold with ups and downs, then the complicated twists and turns of this great play from start to finish. In this play, she was the very first one to be kicked out, becoming an eliminated cannon fodder. She was discarded so cleanly that there wasn't even a speck left as a remainder. Before, no matter if it was at home or at her teacher's place, she was always the star that everyone revolved around. There never was anyone who could steal the spotlight that belonged only to her. Even by the person considered to be courted by His Highness Prince Jin, it would also be out of the question. She could not allow herself to be insulted like this. All the pride she had in her body since birth would absolutely not allow her to bow down her head. Looking at Su Luo, a killing intent flashed through Su Qing's beautiful eyes that were clear, tranquil and cold. Su Luo. I challenge you. Within the quiet hall, Su Qing's ice-cold voice drifted out, carrying an icy arrogance that would absolutely not tolerate rejection. The first person to react was Su Zian. Just a moment ago, he was still immersed in a beautiful dream that he wove himself. Now all of a sudden, he heard these words from Su Qing, and immediately, his eyes jumped and he loudly chided, "Qing'er, what nonsense are you talking about? Quickly shut up." Because of His Highness Prince Jin's concern and care for Su Luo, now, her position had shot up immediately. Who dared to move against her the slightest? Did you not want to live anymore? Su Zian was angered beyond reason by Su Qing. Su Qing paid no mind to her father berating her. Her ice-cold gaze merely remained fixed on Su Luo, like a poisonous snake biting down tightly and not letting go. Life and death duel. Su Luo, do you dare to accept this challenge? She had simply gone insane. Su Zian was furious to the point of nearly being hopping mad. He rigidly glared at Su Qing, with one hand slapping towards her. Life and death duel. The two of you are flesh and blood sisters. Why speak of a life and death duel? You want to die, I will help you accomplish this right now. Not even mentioning that Su Luo was now being shielded by His Highness Prince Jin, just this information alone, if it were to spread out, would immediately turn them into a laughingstock in the entire capital. To what degree had this hatred reached so they had to use a life and death duel among sisters to end this hatred? This was the reason why Su Zian, without further ado, rejected the demand. Even though the corner of Su Qing's mouth was bleeding from Su Zian's slap, her gaze was still as cold and dark as a poisonous snake, unwaveringly fixed on Su Luo. Stressing every syllable, she said, "Su Luo, do you dare? If you refuse, then you simply are not fit to receive His Highness Prince Jin's affection. You are a coward. You are unworthy." Today, she was repeatedly refused, ridiculed and humiliated. This was the greatest shame for Su Qing since birth. Now, she must use blood to purge this shame. Otherwise, this would become the greatest devil in her heart for the rest of her life. In the future, when she would get caught by the devil in her heart, she would not be able to make any progress in her cultivation. Nangong Liuyun's sword-like eyebrows nodded slightly, his ice-cold phoenix eyes swept toward Su Qing. He opened his mouth and said frostily, "If you want to die, do not be anxious, this king will help you accomplish this." Su Zian's heart jumped up violently for some time. If His Highness Prince Jin wanted to kill someone, that would be simply like being marked for death by Yama the King of Hell. No one would be able to escape this. Su Zian once again pulled back his hand to slap at Su Qing's face, his furious voice bellowed, "Quickly shut up. People, come, drag Su Qing away and lock her up." Su Qing's mouth hooked into a sinister, fierce sneer, her gaze unblinkingly stared at Su Luo, "You coward. Su Luo, basically, you are just a good-for-nothing. Waste. Idiot. Coward. You are afraid of me. You simply could not defeat me." Ha 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 ha. Su Luo knew that Su Qing was using insults to push her into a rash action. If she was clever enough, she could totally hide behind Nangong Liuyun's body and let him handle Su Qing. Right now, she could rely on Nangong Liuyun, leaving aside whether she could afford to repay him for this favor or not. But if she did that now, in the future could it be that whenever she come across someone stronger than herself, she would need to rely on Nangong Liuyun? For all of eternity. However, the assassin side from her previous life told her, when relying on a mountain, the mountain would collapse. Depending on a person, that person would run away. Nobody could be more reliable when compared to herself. Chapter 332, Playboy, 3. In this world where the strong rules, she must constantly become stronger and continuously exceed her own limits. Only this way would she be able to stand among the forest of the strong. And then stand at the summit of the strong. Su Luo had both arms crossed in front of her chest. Her gaze was frigid and she lightly swept Su Qing a glance, "Life and death duel. Su Qing, did you not get it wrong? Life and death duel, once you stood in the ring, if one side did not die, then no winner could be determined. Even if one side admitted defeat, it was still no good. This was a battle where if one person did not die, it would never end. Therefore, it was only for deep enmity and great hatred, otherwise basically no one would lay down a life or death condition before entering the ring of a life and death duel. And yet, the first thing out of Su Qing's mouth was a life and death duel, not leaving even a little bit of leeway for the opponent. It could be clearly seen how deep the resentment and grudge in her heart was. Su Qing's voice was as cold as ice, chilling through the bone. You didn't mishear what I said. I really want to set down a written challenge for battle. A written challenge for a life and death duel. Do you dare to accept it? Scoff. Nangong Luyun uttered a derisive sound. A fourth-rank martial artist issued a written challenge for a life and death duel to a third rank, and even in such a courageous and righteous manner. Indeed, very interesting. Speaking of which, you felt no shame in suggesting this out loud. However, even this king felt ashamed just listening. Nangong Liuyun's remark, these words, immediately made Su Qing's face turn very red. She resentfully and ashamedly turned her face away. Finally, she let out a cold snort and merely glared at Su Luo. Do you dare to accept? Don't dare to accept, then don't accept. Su Luo faintly smiled. What's so hard about accepting it? But I have a condition. What condition? Su Qing never expected that Su Luo really would dare to accept. A touch of astonishment flashed through her eyes, followed closely behind by her urgently asking, afraid they would be interrupted by others. This battle must be set to 3 months later. 3 months, with the assistance of medicinal pills and crystal stones, her cultivation would absolutely go up another level. The present her still have too large of gap from Su Qing. She wanted to give herself a chance. She thought to test to what degree her cultivation could progress under the force of these kind of circumstances. 3 months. Su Qing sneered repeatedly. Good, then just after 3 months. Su Luo, I'm really looking forward to your performance. 3 months. Could it be she still believed that in a period of 3 months, she would be promoted from the 3rd rank to the 4th rank? Really ridiculous. Even if she really finally got promoted to the 4th rank, then again, so what? At that time, she would have already reached the middle or maybe the peak of the 4th rank. In the same manner, she would still effortlessly and easily eliminate her. As for His Highness Prince Jean, that hurdle. Humph, His Highness Prince Jean was again not a forever dedicated kind of person. A 3-month period was enough for him get tired of playing with her. At that time, maybe he would still praise her that she did good. Nangong Liuyun's sword-like eyebrows nodded coldly. He took a quick, annoyed glance at Su Luo. However, Su Luo shook her head at him. The arrow was already undrawn on the bow, so she had no choice but to shoot it. Su Qing had put forth the life and death duel in front of so many people. If she didn't accept it, from now on, her days would be an unbroken succession of public attempts to kill and assassinate her. Since they were all battles, then why shouldn't she just set a time? Within this period of time, she should strive very hard to cultivate, right? Nangong Luyun coldly snorted in his heart, but very quickly, he smoothed out his eyebrows. Humph, humph, if at that time Luo girl didn't have the odds to beat Su Qing, then he would personally undertake the task and directly kill Su Qing just like that. Why would there be so much wasted words? Having thought up to here, Nangong Luyun felt relieved soon after. Su Qing and Su Luo's life and death duel actually made Su Zian extremely anxious. On one side was Su Qing, whom he normally doted on and held in high regards from before. On the other side was Su Luo, who rose abruptly because Nangong Luyun fancied her. This made things exceedingly difficult for him. Returning to her courtyard, Su Luo contemplated if she should have Lu Luo test at the spirit testing temple. After all, Lu Luo was always very loyal. In the future, Su Luo's cultivation would continue to rise. If Lu Luo was to make no headway in her cultivation, then in time, she would not be able to keep up with her footsteps. Chapter 333, Playboy, 4. The result from the spirit testing temple made Su Luo very satisfied. Because even though Lu Luo's talent wasn't very good, it was also not too bad. She was actually a green-level talent. Nangong Luyun was afraid Su Luo would have an accident and assigned Ling Feng to come over and guard her. Su Luo conveniently handed Lu Luo over to Ling Feng and shut herself in her room. She started to single-mindedly practice and cultivate. She remembered that blackish bronze plaque she won from Lu family's old man. At that time she had immediately tossed it into her space. Coming back was another huge pile of different things that kept her busy until now, when everyone finally dispersed. As a result, she hadn't had an opportunity to carefully study it until now. Su Luo retrieved that blackish bronze plaque from within her space, placing it in her hand, she turned it around to examine it. The outer appearance of this bronze plaque, besides the few illegible and flamboyant handwritten words, she completely could not tell what was inside it that was so special. Su Luo recalled that piece of jade the venerable divine dragon gave her. At that time, she had poured spirit power into it and afterwards, she was able to see the cultivation methods sealed inside. Could it be that this piece of bronze plaque also used the same method? Sure enough, when Su Luo closed her eyes and poured her spirit power into the blackish bronze plaque, a group of densely packed written words immediately emerged in her mind. With a careful look, it actually was the cultivation method for spirit dance steps. As expected, the first condition to cultivate this was exactly what Nangong Luyun mentioned previously. Innate spirit power must reach the purple level, otherwise the vigor of the mind basically was not strong enough to master the spirit dance steps. Within the notes, Su Luo actually saw such a sentence: if a space master was to cultivate this, there was a multiplier effect. Finally, they might also cultivate the spirit dance steps to the realm of teleportation. The realm of teleportation? Su Luo was immediately stunned. If she was able to cultivate to the realm of teleportation, then that speed could be said to have reached the pinnacle. When the time came, who could possibly catch her? Thinking up until now, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a nefarious smile. Spirit power at the purple level, she had. The nearly extinct space mage on this continent, she was. This spirit dance steps was practically created just for her. There wasn't another cultivation method that was more suited for her to practice. The most coincidental matter was that the Lu family's elder ancestor had actually voluntarily come to her door and personally delivered it into her hands. Recalling how Elder Lu looked after Nangong Luyun successfully oppressed him, the smiling expression on Su Luo's face became even more obvious. But very quickly, she collected herself and regained her resolute expression. 3 months' time, could she really cultivate to the 4th rank and fight to see who was stronger? According to the information she obtained, first thing in the morning, Su Qing had already gone back to her teacher's sect. In this 3-month period, don't know to what state Su Qing's cultivation would be promoted to. Su Luo very quickly tossed Su Qing to the back of her mind, and started her own cultivation practice. The first layer of the spirit dance steps, speeding up. She must expand the range of the handprint of the great dimensional imprint, increasing its power by 10-fold. The small fireball technique must be cultivated to the large fireball technique. As for the wood system, Su Luo felt that this was of little value and was weak. Granted, even if she was to cultivate it to a high level, the wood system relied on plants in battle, and its fighting strength would not be too great. Therefore, she didn't plan to cultivate it as an auxiliary force for the fight. After all, right now, her main fighting force and technique was the great dimensional imprint. Her auxiliary fighting force was her fire element system. She also had speed from spirit dance steps. As long as she combined it well, then its formidable power would be very astonishing. To torture and kill a 4th-rank martial artist was also not impossible. Su Luo sat in the lotus position on her bed, then she took out some spirit liquid medicine that she had successfully refined from orange-colored crystal stones. She poured a few drops into her mouth, placed both hands on her knees and tightly closing her eyes. She allowed her body to slowly absorb the pure essence from that potent medicine. And under the permeation of the orange-colored spirit liquid into her body, Su Luo's dantian started to expand and strengthen bit by bit. In the following month, Su Luo became a recluse. She rarely walked out of her room, all the time she had was employed on her cultivation practice. Chapter 334, Playboy 5, with her forgetting to eat and sleep in her dedication to cultivating, then adding in the unending stream of crystal stone spirit liquid's assistance, even though she hadn't advanced to the 4th rank, the result she obtained was still very astonishing. First of all, the small fireball technique was the very first to break through to the large fireball technique. Its attack power compared to before had been upgraded by as much as 5-fold. The great dimensional imprint, while it still hadn't reached the boundary of the 2nd layer, the handprint was however a lot larger than before. Its might had also risen quite a bit compared to before. Yet, the boundary of the 2nd layer, no matter how much Su Luo cultivated and tried to sense it, she was unable to set in motion the spirit force in her body. She thought that the reason might be because her strength was too low. If she was to run into Lu Qingfeng again right now, she would absolutely be able to dominate in defeating him. And no longer would it be like last time when she had to use medicinal pills to still fight very exhaustingly for her life. As for the spirit dance steps, Su Luo, after tumbling down countless times, finally touched the doorway. Within this period of time, most of her time was spent on practicing the spirit dance steps. The more she practiced it, the more she felt the footwork was exquisite, peerlessly appearing as graceful as an immortal. Merely just considering the speed alone, nobody within the 3rd rank could match it. Originally, she had just entered the beginning of the 3rd rank, but after 1 month of trying hard to the point of going without sleep or meals, she had already reached the middle of the 3rd rank. This kind of cultivation speed, if others were to find out, would absolutely make people insane from jealousy. Within this month, when Su Luo got tired of cultivating, she would just run over to refine medicinal pills. After refining medicinal pills, she would once again run back to cultivate her spirit strength. She would repeat this cycle non-stop in this way. Not only had she refined many medicinal pills simultaneously, her ability in refining pills had also advanced by leaps and bounds. What was even more significant was that her wood and fire dual elemental systems also followed after in growing by leaps and bounds. In summary, through this month's bitter practice, her harvest was very huge. In her space, Su Luo sat cross-legged by the side of the spirit spring with her eyes tightly closed. A fine layer of sweat seeped out of her face. Su Luo, in the course of her cultivation, even she herself didn't notice a circle of spirit power rushing around her entire body. Finally, following her breathing, it quietly entered into her body. It was constantly nourishing her internal organs. After a month of cultivating during which eating and sleeping were forgotten, Su Luo had now already reached a bottleneck. The originally soaring growth of spirit strength had also become slower. In addition, those dozens of crystal stones that she had refined into spirit liquid had also been almost completely consumed by her. Time to go out. Su Luo opened the tightly secured door. Outside was the harsh and dazzling sunlight. "Miss, you came out." Seeing Su Luo walk out, the most excited person was none other than Lu Luo. Su Luo faintly smiled and nodded her head. "How did your cultivation practice go? Is there any progress?" Before, she had let Lu Luo drink a cup of celestial spirit water to help her get rid of the impurities within her body. Soon after, she also tossed her a few bottles of crystal stone spirit liquid, on top of getting the services of an expert like Ling Feng free of charge. If Lu Luo still hadn't made a little progress, then she would really give up. Lu Luo's entire face was covered with a huge smile, her pair of eyes were bent into a crescent moon shape. She excitedly nodded her head repeatedly. yes, yes, yes. This servant is now already a first-rank martial artist. I feel exceedingly good. Oh, truly, even in my dreams. This servant never expected that one day, she would also become a martial artist. On this continent it was clearly stipulated that a martial artist's position in society, compared to that of an ordinary normal person, was at a higher, more noble level. In addition, after becoming a martial artist, you also have the basic strength for self-protection. No wonder Lu Luo would be this excited. Ling Feng's stiff face that appeared to have nerve paralysis noiselessly appeared in front of Su Luo. He expressionlessly cast a glance at Su Luo. In an ice-cold tone, he said, "His Highness has arrived." Sure enough, in the wake of his words, very quickly, Nangong Liuyun's figure appeared in front of Su Luo. Chapter 335, Playboy, 6. Under the Chinese snowball viburnum tree, the petals of the cherry blossoms which were as white as snow fluttered down, sprinkling the ground. Nangong Luyun was dressed in a black brocade robe, the tassels on his jade belt wantonly danced gently in the wind. His face was like the month of the Mid-Autumn Festival, smiling lightly again and again while looking at her. The him right now appeared to be respectable, roguishly charming, handsome beyond compare, and full of hidden depths. He had that kind of extreme allure that was a little flaky, but gave off ample aggressiveness. The sun in the sky was just at its most magnificent, the plants in her courtyard were blooming. The scene was very picturesque, making him appear so handsome that it was as if he just walked out of a painting. This King's Luo girl finally came out from closed-door practice. Nangong Luyun gazed deeply at Su Luo and said in a teasing tone, "If you hadn't come out now, then this king was about to enter by smashing the door." Saying this, he reached out to hold Su Luo's hand, and without regard for others, he probed her cultivation. The Nangong Luyun before her had an extremely good-looking smile on his face. That kind of smile made people feel dazzled, as if all of a sudden, the sky looked magnificent and splendid with a warm breeze within thousands of miles. It was incomparably brilliant, as if all the air she inhaled was exceedingly fresh and clean. She was merely in seclusion for a month. Why was it that it felt like it was a lifetime ago? It seemed as if it had been a very, very long time, and was as if she had missed him just a little bit. Su Luo became aware that she was looking at Nangong Luyun as if her mind had gone blank. She couldn't help but to inwardly curse at herself. "Were you waiting for me to come out of seclusion from the start?" "Why?" Su Luo looked at him and puzzledly asked. "Haven't seen each other for 1 or 2 months, and this king is not allowed to miss you?" Nangong Luyun hugged her full and slender waistline, as if the action was expected and was a matter of fact, of course. The corner of his mouth had a smile. Not coming earlier is not as good as coming on time. Luo girl is really the #1 blessed person under the heavens. The word timely is the one you are rushing to catch. Su Luo became increasingly more confused. Could it be that today was some huge day, really? Why was it that she didn't even have the slightest impression of this? What timely coincidence? Su Luo looked at him with a perplexed expression on her face. Nangong Luyun didn't answer her, he only drew her along by the hand, and stole a kiss from her. Seeing Su Luo's expression becoming annoyed, the corner of Nangong Luyun's eyes and the tip of his brows had a smiling expression, like a child that had successfully stolen some sweets. It seemed as if he was in a very cheerful mood. "Let's go, follow this king to our tryst." A tryst? An unnatural expression flashed across Su Luo's face. She tried to shake off his hand that would not let go. "Who has a relationship with you? Did I promise to go? Quickly release my hand." A tryst, when applied to a woman and a man, how ambiguous a way it was to word things. This word would define the relationship between both sides. And it was very obvious that no matter how Nangong Luyun defined their relationship, she still hadn't reached that degree with him. Nangong Luyun's footsteps paused, his cold, clear eyes swept across her body. Before she could return to her senses, that ice-cold, beautiful pair of eyes invoked a smiling expression that was alluring and would entice anyone who saw it, wanting to resist but still welcoming. Girl, as if this king still doesn't understand you. Let's go, stop dilly-dallying. Rubbish talk. Su Luo showed that she was not convinced. What was called wanting to resist but still welcoming? How could she have this kind of intent? Nangong Luyun rather seriously and earnestly examined her. Want to promote your cultivation and defeat your opponent, no? If you want to, then follow this king and let's go. Su Luo saw his raised eyebrows and lips and the still deadly earnest, old-fashioned, solemn appearance. Suddenly, she felt he looked extremely ridiculous. She couldn't bear it and let out a sound of laughter. Nangong Luyun extended his slender, jointed forefinger and immediately knocked her gently on the head. Rewarding her with a quick knuckle to the head. What are you laughing at? Laugh at this king again, I will sell you and count the money. You would be loath to part with me. Su Luo blurted it out without giving her brain enough time to think it over. Once the words were out of her mouth, after coming awake and becoming aware, she then found that it was improper. According to her and Nangong Luyun's relationship, this sentence seemed a little ambiguous. Chapter 336, Playboy, 7. Nangong Luyun was as quick as using a stick to hit a snake. He immediately lifted an eyebrow and looked at her with a faint smile. He smoothly responded to her sentence. Luo girl really understands this king. Like you said, this king really would be loath to part with you. Su Luo had lost this round, and somewhat annoyedly patted her own head. She really had become foolish since being shut in, to forget Nangong Luyun, that roguish nature. She even walked into that trap. Su Luo helplessly sent him a glare, but Nangong Luyun still appeared improper and hugged her slender waist tightly to him, bringing her to the front of his body. However, Su Luo shook off his hand. After that, she took a step and walked forward while ignoring Nangong Luyun. Nangong Luyun rushed to catch up, and walked alongside Su Luo. His tone was extremely fawning and cordial. Okay, you are already this king's people, why are you still so easily embarrassed? This king doesn't mind, why would you care? Su Luo was just about to retort her refusal, but when she recalled how thick-skinned and shameless this guy, Nangong Luyun, could be, she endured it. Su Luo merely focused on continuing to walk forward. Going to ignore him. The more attention she paid him, the more enthusiastic he became, and so on, without end. Nangong Luyun fawningly tugged at her little hand. Su Luo, with one toss, shook him off. With her face turned away, she cast a glance at him. I am not interested in you. Nangong Luyun also didn't get angry, he smiled alluringly with a devilish charm. He leaned close to her, persistently giving her his selling points. Such a hard-mouthed girl, it's obvious you like this king very much, but insist on saying you are not interested. Humph. Let me tell you, this king is the kind of outstanding, elegant, handsomely suave, who knows literature and martial arts, and that shun debauchery to remain chaste, exceptionally good type of man. Even if you lit a lantern to find one, you still won't find one this good. Let me tell you, from now on, you should be careful and constantly be mindful of me, else this king will be snatched away by others. When Nangong Luyun was boasting, his tone was full of himself and conceited with a high-spirited expression. It seemed as if he was not the slightest bit embarrassed. His words struck Su Luo like lightning, making her speechlessly shake her head. This person was His Highness Prince Jin His Highness Prince Jin. The legendary, unwavering, expedient killer that killed people like cutting grass. His only hobby was to cut off people's hands and feet, and was bloodthirsty like a devil king. Now, he had this kind of childish manner, simply made her want to cry but lacking the tears, and even more, he was hard to handle. Su Luo halted her footsteps, supporting her forehead, she sighed, I beseech you to stop talking, you may not be embarrassed, but I feel ashamed on your behalf. Nangong Luyun gave two humph sounds. You don't have good vision, girl. This girl was really hard to swindle, no matter how he tried to swindle her, he couldn't deceive her. In the end, Su Luo was still very curious, therefore she followed him and together, they approached the dragon-scaled horse. Today's dragon-scaled horse was not harnessed to the rack of a carriage, rather, it had a saddle on its back. It heroically stood at the doorway, looking gorgeous and vigorous. Seeing Nangong Luyun and Su Luo approach, the dragon-scaled horse immediately abandoned its own master and jubilantly tried to move closer to Su Luo. Its massive head incessantly rubbed into Su Luo's embrace. Nangong Luyun's face darkened as he tore the dragon-scaled horse away from Su Luo and directly carried Su Luo onto the horse's back. I can do it myself. Su Luo pursed her lips and smiled. This man would even be jealous of the dragon-scaled horse, he really was very interesting. In fact, she was aware of why the dragon-scaled horse wanted to be close to her. Last time, when she took the dragon-scaled horse carriage back, Su Luo took out a little celestial spirit water and fed it to the dragon-scaled horse. Originally she did it as a test, to see whether besides the little divine dragon liking the celestial spirit water, other magical beasts would also like it. Who knew that only a few mouthfuls of celestial spirit water would get the dragon-scaled horse to be on her side? The dragon-scaled horse's attitude towards Su Luo immediately underwent a huge 180-degree turn. Since then, the dragon-scaled horse would follow behind her but any time to anywhere. Otherwise, it would use those pair of limpid, bright and huge eyes to look at Su Luo pitifully. Just seeing it would make a person's heart hurt. Chapter 337, Playboy, 8, Now, it was also like that, Nangong Luyun held Su Luo and sat them on its back, the two of them rode together in the same saddle. They were very close to each other. Su Luo tried several times to say that she could ride a horse, but was diverted away from the topic by Nangong Luyun changing the subject. At this moment, the dragon-scaled horse refused to move. He continuously turned his head to rub against Su Luo. Even Nangong Luyun was somewhat unable to command it. When Su Luo saw Nangong Luyun's dark face, she secretly laughed in her heart. She bent her body and leaned down with her hand, offering the dragon-scaled horse the celestial spirit water and fed it into the dragon-scaled horse's mouth. After the dragon-scaled horse drank, its eyes narrowed in an appearance of enjoying something. Now, can we go? Su Luo smilingly stroked its head. This gluttonous child was really the same as the little divine dragon. The dragon-scaled horse docilely licked her hand, then it let out a neighing sound, and both of its pair of hooves leaped and darted away. Its speed was simply at the peak like a whirlwind, as if it was intentionally currying favor by showing obeisance in front of Su Luo. The corner of Nangong Luyun's mouth moved slightly, he was somewhat speechless. He stroked Su Luo's head and let out a sigh. Look at you girl, in order to get close to this king, you even built a good relationship with my dragon-scaled horse beforehand. Still saying you are not interested in this king? Girl, your mouth says no but your heart says yes. Don't feel like talking to you. Su Luo lifted her head snubbing him, and patted the dragon-scaled horse's head. Immediately, the dragon-scaled horse's speed soared once again. The buildings on both sides constantly fell behind. As fast as lightning, they arrived at their destination. East-facing pier. A luxurious yacht that was about 200 meters long and 30 meters wide stood still, moored at the mouth of the shore. The luxurious yacht was imposing and simply looked like a luxurious palace on top of the water. What made Su Luo surprised was that in this world, the maritime navy vessels were actually developed to this degree. Nangong Luyun skillfully pulled Su Luo along by the hand, taking her on a stroll towards that luxurious yacht. On the docking platform, a gangplank was slowly lowered from the yacht. Nangong Luyun led Su Luo, sauntering up that gangplank. Once they had climbed onto the yacht deck, she found 3 to 4 people sitting on the erected chairs chatting away, both male and female. The men's clothing were embroidered and looked magnificent. The women's figures were beautiful, they all appeared bright, neat, and beautiful, extremely attractive to the eye. Hearing a noise, they uniformly turned their head and looked towards them. Among them was a kindly intellectual youth who was the first to react. He put down the stuff in his hand, stood up and walked over. With a smile in his eyes, he said, "Nangong, we waited for you for a full 6 hours. If you still had not come, don't even think about hooking a single amethyst-thorned fish." "Oh, who is this?" This youth, without regard for others, exchanged greetings with Nangong Luyun. He turned his head once again, with a smile on his face, he looked at Su Luo. His eyes were full of inquisitiveness. Nangong Luyun would also bring a young lady out. Moreover, this miss was also not the Jade Lake's fairy. Nangong Luyun drew Su Luo by her slender waist even closer to him, in a mild tone of exchanging greetings, he said, "The future Princess Jean, properly give her your greetings." "Oh, Princess Jean. Nangong, you're really quite something. Wordlessly and silently, you found a Princess Jean for yourself. How many beautiful women will inwardly sob tearfully." This white-robed youth's countenance was all smiles. He looked like a refined intellectual with an extremely mild and gentle temper. At this moment, another blue-robed youth came over. His face had a smile and exchanged greetings with Nangong Luyun. "Oh, seldom is Nangong Luyun seen bringing a beauty out, did the sun rise in the west today?" Nangong Luyun swept him a faint glance, and the blue-robed youth's shoulder immediately shrank back. "Call her sister-in-law." Nangong Luyun's gaze swept a glance at those oriole and swallow-like ladies not far away. His voice was indifferent. Nangong Luyun also did not deny it and gave an alluring smile that was devilishly charming. "In any case, this lifetime, you will certainly be this king's Princess Jean. Once you are exhausted, you will land in this yellow spring. 1. See where you can escape to. 1. Exhausted you will land in this yellow spring." This could also be referring to and translated as once you are poor, you will want to land in this golden spring of wealth. Chapter 338, Playboy, 9. The blue-robed youth didn't expect that Nangong Luyun would be this serious. His face froze for a moment in a dumbfounded expression, then, he smiled. In a well-behaved manner, he called Su Luo sister-in-law and became more affectionate towards her. "I'm not your sister-in-law, and also, don't have any relation to him. Don't just randomly shout out a title at someone." Su Luo thought about it and pushed Nangong Luyun away by a step, then followed closely by trying to explain it once thoroughly. The blue-robed youth, seeing this, suddenly laughed. He lifted an eyebrow towards Nangong Luyun and laughingly said, "Oh, second older brother, has this not been settled?" The white-robed youth also followed immediately with a kindly smile, "It seems so." No wonder Nangong Luyun was so busy recently, to the point even his shadow couldn't be seen, let alone the person. Wow! Clearly, nobody expected that the always outwardly cold Nangong Luyun would actually declare such a naked confession, and so publicly. Immediately, the people at the scene started to get riled up, pair after pair of probing, measuring eyes gathered on Su Luo's body. They always thought that Nangong Luyun, in this lifetime, would just be like this, avoiding debauchery, remaining chaste with his advanced stage of misophobia, not fond of having women be near him. However, they never anticipated that Nangong Luyun who didn't sing, would become an instant sensation when he sang. 1. Su Luo heard the joking manner between them. In her heart, she had some doubts. Nangong Luyun was what kind of identity? When he was at Su Manor, Su Zian worshipped him like a god, with merely a coughing sound. Her cheap old man was like someone being scared by a tiger's roar. However, the few people in front of her eyes, each and every one of them was very handsome, talented, glowing with health and vigor. If you placed them outside, each and every one of them would be giants among men. Moreover, just looking at their manner, they appeared to be very familiar with Nangong Luyun. They also called each other brothers. Don't know what the identity of these people was. But, she was certain their background and influence were definitely not small. At this moment, don't know from where, Bei Chening popped out, dressed in an all-red, embroidered robe. He saw Nangong Luyun and Su Luo, and barged his way into the crowd around them. His entire face and eyes were full of pure smiles. "Sister-in-law, I just knew that you would come. You coming is simply too right." Faced with such an enthusiastic and warm Bei Chening, as if they very familiar, Su Luo was puzzled. What did he mean by saying that having her come was simply too right? What, who? Bring it here. Bei Chening lifted an eyebrow, with a self-satisfied smile, he held out his hand. "Just like you to bother about this little thing, take it." The blue-robed youth on the side humphed twice and tossed a green crystal stone to Bei Chening. So as it turned out, Bei Chening and the blue-robed youth had made a bet about whether Nangong Luyun would bring Su Luo out. In the end, naturally, it was Bei Chening who won. Bei Chening tried to win favor using someone else's property, and catching that green-colored crystal stone, he gave it to Su Luo. "Sister-in-law, a very small gift on our first meeting, please kindly accept it." The people here, except for Nangong Luyun, Su Luo had only ever seen the red-robed Bei Chening before. Still recalling the last time when he arrived at Su Manor, he was strutting around with such a blustering appearance, he scared those people in Su Manor until they wouldn't dare to even breathe out. She remembered that Bei Chening came from the unfathomable, enigmatic Bei Chen family. "Not going to accept a reward that's undeserved, since it was won by you, then you should take it." Su Luo smiled while waving her hand. Perhaps as far as others were concerned, a green-colored crystal stone was very precious. Yet, because she had the little divine dragon, and had also accepted old Chen, who back in the old days had the title of King of Crystal Stones as a subordinate, therefore, regarding crystal stones, Su Luo had never lacked for them. However, the others watching did not know this. Seeing Su Luo refuse the green-colored crystal stone without even batting an eye, the expression in their eyes showed that their evaluation of her had become higher. Bei Chening smiling happily while stuffing the green-colored crystal stone into Su Luo's hand. "Sister-in-law, just take it. This crystal was won by me through a bet, just accept it as an apology for the matter from last time." Saying this, Bei Chening snuck a glance at Nangong Luyun. That appearance was like a mouse having seen a cat. Su Luo naturally knew what matter he was referring to. One, who didn't sing, would become an instant sensation when he sang, is an idiom saying this person never did anything like this before, and when he suddenly did it he did in such a way that it shocked people. Chapter 339, Playboy, 10, Before, because of his ambiguous words, that seemed right but were wrong, it caused everyone in Su Manor to misunderstand. It was to the extent that everyone thought His Highness Prince Jean had feelings for Su Qing. This thus led to a series of misunderstandings, until finally, Su Qing flew into a rage from the humiliation and challenged her to a life-and-death duel. Su Luo smiled faintly. It was she, herself, who was too narrow-minded. It had nothing to do with you. You must not take the blame and place it on your own body. Bei Chening stealthily peeked a glance at Nangong Luyun. Seeing his stiff expression, he immediately curled up, shivering. All of a sudden, he took out everything he carried on his body and gifted it to Su Luo. "No need, sister-in-law, you needn't be so polite. If you continue to be this polite, then it would be someone's turn to be impolite to me." After stuffing it all into Su Luo's hand, he immediately turned around and slipped away. He ran away faster than a rabbit. That blue brocade-robed youth had a slight examining look as he glanced at Su Luo. His eyes carried a smile and said to Nangong Luyun, "Last time, Bei Chen Ying's father dragged him by the ears home to make him do penal servitude. Could it be that that was your masterpiece?" Nangong Luyun swept him a cold glance, and declined to comment. "He is too noisy." The brocade-robed youth was speechless and spread out his hands. Sure enough, this man was extremely petty and narrow-minded. He wouldn't even eat a little loss. Finished thinking, his gaze again went towards Su Luo. though it had a little less of an examining expression. Now, it had a somewhat more amiable expression. In the time it took to speak, the luxurious yacht left the shoreline, setting out and advancing towards the vast ocean. Nangong Luyun and that blue-robed youth walked to the side. The two of them seemed to have something to talk about. Su Luo very tactfully walked over to the side with a row of seats that was not far away, and randomly picked an empty chair to sit in. Her gaze roamed to a far-away distance, surveying the scenery in the distance. Now, it was already close to nightfall. Numerous red clouds stretched out as far as the eye could see, like an unrolled, scarlet, silk fabric. The scene was as dazzling as fireworks. Su Luo was just sitting. Very quickly, a person seized the opportunity and sat down by her side. Su Luo turned her head back to look, and saw that the person who came was Beichening, someone she was familiar with. Su Luo had a very good impression of this lively, unaffected, red-robed youth, that at the pivotal moment, had supported her. "Why aren't you going over to play together with everyone?" This dreaded president of the mercenary union that had frightened everyone, was now smiling until two of his little canine teeth showed, looking like the sunny boy next door. However, Su Luo knew that if this person was to be vengeful, he was also a master killer who cut down people decisively. Su Luo smiled faintly, not familiar and also not accustomed to it. Beichening held his arms while looking at Su Luo. Having heard what she said, he suddenly smiled and leaned close to her side. "Sister-in-law need not be accustomed to it. Letting them get used to you will be just fine." These words were said full of self-confidence, like making a solemn vow. Clearly, it was because of honoring Nangong Luyun. Calling Su Luo with some inquisitiveness, he continued to ask, "Able to become Nangong Luyun's sworn brother, they are also not some simple characters, right?" "Oh. On your way here, did Nangong Luyun not mention it?" A touch of astonishment flashed through Beichen Ying's eyes. It seemed to him, since Nangong Luyun cared so much about Su family's fourth girl, then surely they will tell each other everything, right? Su Luo recalled that on the way here, Nangong Luyun had sat behind her, constantly trying to provoke and tease her. A touch of scarlet flashed across her face. She made a sound of clearing her throat and sternly said, "Maybe it was because he forgot. Having you tell me is also the same." Beichening also felt that it was necessary to fill in the information for Su Luo once thoroughly. "Has sister-in-law heard of 1 city, 2 palace halls, 3 palaces, 4 sacred places?" 1 city, 2 palace halls, 3 palaces, 4 sacred places. Su Luo's eyes flashed and somewhat astonishingly glanced at Beichening. Soon after, a trace of understanding flashed across Su Luo's beautiful eyes. No wonder these youths could become sworn brothers with Nangong Luyun. So as it turned out, every one of their background was not very small. 1 city, 2 palace halls, 3 palaces, 4 sacred places, it was this continent's most formidable 10 huge powers. Among them, Purgatory City was the number 1 power. Chapter 340, Playboy, 11. The 2 palace halls were separated into the Beichen Palace Hall and the Luoyu Palace Hall. Beichening came from the unfathomable, enigmatic Beichen Palace. The 3 palaces were separated into the Jade Lake Palace, the Green Jade Palace and Central Palace. The Jade Lake's fairy was the Jade Lake Palace's, this generation's, most favored princess. The 4 royal families were the Nangong family, Anya family, Ouyang family and Xianyuan family. Not to speak of the existence of that 1 city, 2 palace halls, 3 palaces, and only mentioning just that 4 great families. On this blue sky continent, the 4 great families each controlled 4 great countries. Like the Nangong family who was in control of the nation of Eastern Ling, they encouraged good governance, and were thus unfailing. Beichening pointed to that blue-robed youth and introduced him, saying, "Don't just look at his happy and enthusiastic appearance when dealing with anyone. This joker comes from the Green Jade Palace. As a child, he was extraordinarily talented, gifted and smart. His strength is so great, to the point of astonishing people. Since he was small, he ate medicinal pills as if eating a meal. Now, he is already at the peak of 6th rank. Lan Xian, this guy's strength is not that much different from Nangong Liuyan's. Peak of 6th rank. Su Luo somewhat astonishingly looked at that blue-robed youth. Never expected that his strength was at the peak of 6th rank, really someone she must not be contemptuous of. In addition, that person who is fond of wearing white is Anya Ming, the South Nation's 3rd royal prince. Bei Qining pointed to the last person, the white-robed youth who had previously stood up and spoken to them, and advised by earnestly saying, "Don't just look at his warm, gentle, sleek appearance, and feel that he is easy to get along with. That branch is the same as Nangong Liuyan, he absolutely is a master at being two-faced. Therefore, if you have nothing to do, talk less with him. It is so as to avoid being scammed by him and still help him count the money." Su Luo looked at Bei Qinying's grumbling with a deeply ingrained, long-standing, resentful expression on his face. She secretly laughed in her heart. It seemed like Bei Qining had been scammed by this Anya Ming and still had helped him count the money before. Moreover, the number of times he got scammed was absolutely unlikely to be small. How does sister-in-law feel about me? My looks are also considered at the top of the jade tree, outstanding, elegant, with universal appeal. A flower which sees me will bloom, right? 3 black lines appeared on Su Luo's forehead. It really was that people who crowd together were just like birds of a feather flocking together. Nangong Liuyan's sworn brothers were just like him, without any sense of shame and thick-skinned. Bei Qining was entirely unaware of Su Luo's inner ridicule of him. He excitedly continued to boast non-stop, "Temperament is like this, if you want sunshine, then there is sunshine. If you want gentleness, then there is gentleness, stormy or light breeze. What you want to do, we'll do it. Sister-in-law, you agree this is correct, right?" He really didn't understand. What made Su Luo most puzzled was why this child was boasting like this in front of her. Managed to seem as if he was selling himself. However, Bei Qining very quickly helped her clear up the confusion. "Since sister-in-law also thinks I am a good person, then you should speak a few sentences of good words on my behalf in front of Nangong Liuyan, okay? Please, the high and mighty venerable president of the mercenary union, don't use this kind of limpid, bright eyes that looked so pitifully to Bisher, okay?" Su Luo held her forehead and dumbfoundedly said, "Don't call me sister-in-law. I really don't have any relationship with Nangong Liuyan. Furthermore, you are his sworn brother, your words are even more useful than mine. Sister-in-law, don't crack jokes. In front of Nangong, 1 sentence from you is equal to 100 sentences from me. Sister-in-law, I beseech you, say something to Nangong so that I won't once again be dragged home to practice sound wave martial arts." Bei Qining had a face of having long suffered, that was desperate from depression, as if that sound wave martial arts tormented him very miserably. Su Luo was helpless from lack of a better option. "I already told you, don't call me sister-in-law." Bei Qining calling her like this, made it seem as if her status has successfully changed to Princess Jean, Nangong Liuyan's wife. "Then, sister-in-law, can you please just help me?" Bei Qining had a wailing at a funeral expression on his little face. His rosy, glossy lips opened and closed, and his watery, limpid eyes which were like peach blossoms, looked at Su Luo, waiting anxiously. Chapter 341, Playboy, 12, Perhaps you are mistaken about something. My relationship with Nangong Liuyan is absolutely not what you guys are imagining. Don't confuse one thing with another. Su Luo simply could not explain it clearly enough for him to understand. She had a feeling she was only making it worse. Bei Qining had a considering expression as he stared at Su Luo. "He still hasn't caught you from the chase yet?" "Hey, sister-in-law, Nangong Liuyan is a good person. Why is it that you won't accept him?" Su Luo suddenly was at a loss for words. This child's words were really blunt that it was cute, making it hard for her to resist. Bei Qining warmly looked at Su Luo. "Really, Nangong Luyun is a good person, a guy like him completely does not lack for women. But for so many years, he had always avoided debauchery and remained chaste. He never let any other women even get near him. Sister-in-law, this is simply too rare and hard to come by. You tell me, am I right or not? To remain chaste, these kind of words being used on Nangong Luyun's body, Su Luo felt it was somewhat embarrassing and frustrating. Only, saying that Nangong Luyun remained chaste, these words seemed somewhat inappropriate. Su Luo said it very bluntly, don't tell me, a woman never appeared by his side. Then, what was the Jade Lake's fairy considered as? Bei Chening seriously looked at her, sincerely and earnestly teaching her, a guy like him, if a woman was given an opportunity, then she wouldn't be able to escape. Up to now, he only gave one person this opportunity, and that's all. You think about it, isn't it like this? Bei Chenying's words made the soft area closest to her heart tremble slightly. Bei Chenying's tone when speaking was unusually serious and gentle. For a split second, it made her feel as if he was really telling the truth. However, in Su Luo's mind, unavoidably, that exceedingly refined and beyond beautiful face that was above the common populace, appeared. All of a sudden, she smiled, though her smile seemed forced. Since you guys are childhood friends who grew up together, you couldn't possibly not know the Jade Lake's fairy, right? This person chased after her to kill her several times. She would absolutely not let her get away with it. At that time, she and the Jade Lake's fairy would not be able to exist together. When the time comes, whose side would Nangong Luyun, who spoiled and indulged the Jade Lake's fairy, stand on? It was truly hard to say. A vexed expression flashed through Bei Chenying's eyes. He silently breathed out a sigh, his expression was heavy and yet earnest. If Nangong Luyun had given her an opportunity, then how could the position of Princess Jean be empty? To tell you the truth, the Jade Lake Palace, all along, had intended them to be connected through marriage. Eastern Ling's emperor also had the same notion. The only person who would not agree to it is Nangong Luyun. Su Luo looked at him with astonishment and some disbelief. After all, the scene in the Sunset Mountain Range at that time had provided her with an impression that was too deep. That pair was like the jade annulus, like a painting, they were inseparably in love. She smiled at him, he whispered softly to her, this picturesque scene had all along been a deep thorn in her heart. Ordinarily, it was silent, at the most critical time, it would run out to punch her in the solar plexus. Bei Chening patted her shoulder, giving her ample encouragement. Why Nangong would refuse her, I don't know. Yet, since meeting you, his entire person has changed. His aura has become less gloomy, has become more spirited and full of life. Wasn't he always a master without the slightest scruple and despising worldly conventions? From what I see, he is living quite well. An image of Nangong Luyun's manner and appearance of always teasing and making fun of her emerged in her head. Whenever they met, at which time did he not resemble a rakish hooligan teasing her? It was completely unlike what Bei Chening said about him being that great and amazing. Bei Chening slowly shook his head, as his gaze looked to a distant place. Quietly and unmovingly, he looked at the clear, gleaming sunlight that was reflected from the waves in the distance. A long time later, he faintly said, "You don't understand, he hasn't been happy since he was little. Before he was 8 years old, he almost completely sealed himself up. Not listening, not looking, not asking and not speaking, as if completely shutting himself away. Afterwards, he slowly got a little better." Chapter 342, Fright on Board, 1a. That kind of alluring and devilishly charming Nangong Luyun, in his childhood, had actually shut himself up. Su Luo's shock was written all over her face. Yes, it had something to do with the death of his mother who was an imperial concubine. But, this matter must wait until he wants to tell you himself. I cannot tell you. Bei Chening, after saying this, he stood up. Finally, he gazed deeply at Su Luo. His tone had a thread of meaning to entrust a task to her. Su Luo, that Nangong could open wide his inner heart to someone, it is not easy for him. You should stop hurting him again, okay? Su Luo watched Beichen Ying's back as he left, and bowed her head to ponder everything deeply. She couldn't tell at all that Nangong Liuyan's heart had a shadow purely by his appearance. Was it because she simply did not pay attention to his mood, or that he hid it too well? In addition, there was that wound on his body. It should also be related to his childhood, right? He would rather die of an illness than seek medical help. Did it also have something to do with this matter? Su Luo's brain was full of questions. However, Beichen Ying unfortunately explicitly informed her that he could not say it. If she wanted to know, she had no choice but to go look for Nangong Liuyan. Bang! A sharp and clear burst of sound exploded above Su Luo's forehead. Su Luo angrily lifted up her eyes and encountered Nangong Liuyan's handsome face that carried a smile. What are you thinking about that made you this enthralled? Be careful you don't get pushed into the water and don't even know it. Nangong Liuyan's tone was low, deep and enticing. His smile was neat, like the clouds softly drifting over the surface of a lake, giving people a very comfortable feeling. Su Luo blankly and foolishly looked at him. The him right now appeared to be very relaxed and easygoing. Yet, he still gave off a kind of outstanding, extraordinary sense of being a giant among men. Originally, she had always thought that Nangong Liuyan was a person who despised worldly conventions, doing as he pleased without the slightest scruple. But ever since she heard Beichen Ying's words from a moment ago, afterwards, when Su Luo looked at Nangong Liuyan again, her gaze couldn't help but carry an expression of probing and sizing him up. His handsome face had a smiling expression, that gaze was beautiful and secluded like a deep pond. Yet, it was also clear like a deep, pure spring. Normally, he would always be cold and didn't smile often. His smile could be separated very clearly, it was almost entirely different. Under a violent rage, it was a coldly fierce, demonic smile, and when he was teasing her, it was a devilishly charming, shallow smile. Apart from these kinds, she hadn't seen him smile once. The him right now had both hands held behind his back, the corner of his robe flipping over, like the only stand-alone, elegant son of nobility. His eyes carried a smile which was filled with clear water as they watched her. The smile at the corner of his lips got even bigger, unexpectedly, it even had a hint of warmth like springtime. His facial features were exquisite beyond compare, simply world-shaking. This smile gave Su Luo a sense of a kind of illusionary beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. As if, once she falls in, she would be so intoxicated that she would be unwilling to wake up again. This kind of him was really like what Beichen Ying had said. That he had a piece of tragic past that he did not want to recollect. That he had a childhood where he shut himself in. Su Luo gazed at him in a daze. Momentarily, she didn't know what she should say and what kind of manner she should use to face him. Is this king that good-looking? Actually made you dazed from looking? The corner of his mouth hooked into a devilishly charming, shallow smile. Sure enough, it was this kind of despising worldly conventions Nangong Liuyan that she was most familiar with. Su Luo slowly exhaled a deep mouthful of air. Originally, she wanted to glare at him, but recalling Beichen Ying's words, she felt as if she really didn't treat him well, and changed her tone of voice. Are you a peacock? All day long, you are this narcissistic and also unashamed of it. This is not narcissism, rather, it is self-confidence, understand? Nangong Liuyan tapped her head. It is just narcissism, there is no one else more narcissistic when compared to you. Su Luo let out two snorting sounds. Nangong Liuyan also did not get angry, it seemed as if his mood was very good. He pulled on her hand and took her along to walk towards the crowd of people. Seeing the endless ocean outside, Nangong Liuyan lazily asked a sentence, "Do you know how to swim?" Su Luo nodded her head, barely know a little. Chapter 343, Fright on Board. too, didn't know from where Bei Chening popped out again, and he winked at Su Luo. You shouldn't be afraid, Nangong Luyun is very amazing. Even if the Dragon King, one, from the myths invited you to the Crystal Palace as a guest, Nangong Luyun will also fish you right back up. Su Luo inquisitively looked at Nangong Luyun. A person's energy would eventually reach a limit. Why was it that he knew everything? How was he proficient at everything? Nangong Luyun smugly lifted an eyebrow and gave two light coughing sounds. He repressed the self-satisfaction at the corner of his lips. Don't waste your words with him, let's go, I'll bring you over to play a little. Seeing his smug expression, suddenly, what Bei Chening said appeared in Su Luo's mind. Bei Chening said, since meeting you, his entire person has changed, become someone more alive. Was this kind of Nangong Luyun what you would call being more alive? Then, when he was a child, the sight of a little boy carved from jade-like gems, with a taut little face, sealing himself off in a world of darkness, appeared in Su Luo's mind. Su Luo's heart suddenly started to ache, and her expression froze. What's wrong? Nangong Luyun detected that her expression had become strange, and he asked a little nervously. Just this could make the noble and indifferent him so nervous. Su Luo did not answer, and instead changed the topic. Her brows and eyes bent in a clear and light smiling expression as she gazed at him. What games are you bringing me to play? Just at this moment, Anya Ming, who sat in front of a small table playing chess at the side, put down a chess piece. Checkmate. Sitting opposite of him was Lan Xian, who vexedly grabbed his hair. Ultimately, he still had no strategy to try and carelessly messed up the chess pieces on the board. Don't want to continue, not going to play this, it's making me bored to death. Anya Ming glowered at Lan Xian, you lost and just destroyed the chess game, don't have good chess manners. Humph, humph. Lan Xian leaned back into his chair, and lazily shot a glance at Anya Ming, beating me and you get so proud? When it comes to playing chess, Nangong Luyun could throw you to a few streets away. If you have the ability, go beat him at chess. Nangong Luyun knew how to play chess and also had superb chess skills. Su Luo's inquisitive gaze landed on Nangong Luyun's body. Nangong Luyun languidly reclined on a deck chair, his sword-like eyebrow lifted slightly, but he did not speak. Bei Chening saw that Su Luo was curious and attending to her, explained, Nangong's chess skill is the most exquisite. When he was 8 years old, at that time, he played chess against the scholars at the Imperial Hanlin Academy University until every one of them lost and fled. Since then, his skills have no rival, but also because of this, he washed his hands off from playing chess. From that time on, he never played chess again. Nangong Luyun's phoenix eyes were closed, faint sunlight shone on his body. His slender eyebrows and pure white skin had a slight luster that seemed to be flowing. The sumptuousness of his whole body, even though his eyes were closed, still made a person unable to move their gaze away. Right now, he seemed to have sunk into a deep sleep and hadn't heard what Bei Chening said. His face didn't have any change in expression. However, having heard what was said, Su Luo was inevitably speechless. Wasn't the 8-year-old Nangong Luyun still a closed-off child? Unexpectedly, he could still play chess to the point of making the scholars at Imperial Hanlin Academy University lose and flee. How large and intelligent was this guy's brain? No wonder his favorite pastime was to ridicule people through sarcasm. He calculated his schemes and machinations completely with numerous layers and endless amounts. As it turned out, those stratagems, as far as he was concerned, were like eating a meal or drinking water. It was that simple. Oh, that's right, where is this yacht heading to? Now, Su Luo finally had a good opportunity to ask. Before, Nangong Luyun did not tell her any of the details, she also didn't carefully ask before being pulled here by him. Now, only after the yacht had sailed for a long time, did she finally have time to question them properly. Bei Chening was simply somewhat speechless. Sister-in-law, do you not even know about the once-a-year fishing event for amethyst-thorned fish? Having only arrived in this world for a few months, Su Luo slowly shook her head. You tell it to me in detail. Before, I was always locked in at Su Manor, so not very familiar with the matters on this continent. 1. The Dragon King. This refers to the Dragon King from the Chinese mythological story written called Journey to the West. They are dragons that with a sneeze could cause rain, and they live in the Crystal Palace within the ocean as rulers. There are 4 dragon kings that ruled the 4 seas, which were named based on the 4 directions. Chapter 344, Fright on Board. 3. Beichening expressed that he clearly understood her words, and very kind-heartedly thoroughly explained at once for her. The body of an amethyst-thorned fish contains rich spirit power. The spirit power from one amethyst-thorned fish has the same amount of spirit power as one piece of green-colored crystal stone. As a result, everyone on the continent wants to catch an amethyst-thorned fish. Beichening paused for a moment, then continued to explain. However, the amethyst-thorned fish is very clever and rarely can be seen normally. Only on the night of July 15th would they gather around the periphery of the amethyst-thorned island on the East Sea. Thus, if you want to capture an amethyst-thorned fish, this opportunity only comes once a year. No wonder initially, when she and Nangong Luyun had arrived, Anya Ming had said that sentence in complaint. So as it turned out, today's mission was to capture some amethyst-thorned fishes. Why would it only happen on the day of July 15th? Su Luo clearly did not understand. Was July 15th a very special day? Nobody knows the answer to this mystery. If people know, then very likely no one needs to wait for this day every year. Beichening told it as it is. Will there be a lot of people going? Su Luo curiously asked. One amethyst-thorned fish was equivalent to the spirit power in a green-colored crystal stone. A green-colored crystal stone on the continent was quite rare. The market price was 5,000 gold coins. Then, this once-a-year gathering to catch fish ought to be very lively and bustling with excitement, right? No, the number of people would unlikely be many. Beichening explained, it's because not just everyone can travel across the areas of water filled with waterspouts to reach the amethyst-thorned island. There are only a few luxurious yachts in the entire Eastern Ling Empire that can cross the waterspouts. Waterspouts? Su Luo was just about to ask, but saw Nangong Luyun suddenly open his phoenix eyes. A cold ray of light flashed through his eyes. Suddenly, he reached out his hand and with one swoop, he immediately scooped Su Luo into his embrace. Su Luo hadn't finished speaking when she felt a severe jolt come from the hull of the ship. Su Luo was unable to stand stably. All of a sudden, she bumped into Nangong Luyun's extremely strong chest. Her nose was extremely sore from knocking into him, that blood almost flowed from her nose. Su Luo was still considered to be one of the lucky ones. On the side, those Oriole and swallow-like women who were brought on board by Beichening, they were originally sitting on the chairs chatting, now, they were sent flying into mid-air by the violent hit on the boat. When the yacht dropped with the force, they were all mercilessly thrown onto the deck. This fall nearly shattered all the bones in their bodies into pieces. They moaned unceasingly for a very long time. They weren't able to crawl up. However, it was still unfinished. The yacht dropped down and very quickly, was lifted high up to float above, almost flying into mid-air. And once again, it heavily dropped onto the water's surface, and it continuously looped in this cycle of motion. The deck was shaking so violently such that simply nobody could stand on it. Those few Oriole and swallow-like women, whose bodies still hadn't crawled up, were once again ruthlessly thrown up high and again fell to the deck. They just resembled some playthings that nature was toying with in the palm of its hand. Between these powerful shakes, the yacht again becomes stable. A heavy and imposing expression flashed through both Anya Ming and Lan Xian's face at this time. Both of them, with very quick steps, walked towards the front of the deck. Beichening also followed after them. He walked a few steps and again turned sideways to look at Nangong Luyun. Is second older brother not coming? Nangong Luyun calmly and composedly played with Su Luo's hair, and leisurely said, "The two of them are more than sufficient." Bei Qining forced a smile and rubbed his nose. He made a wry face towards Su Luo and happily took off towards the two people with a bounce. It seemed to Su Luo, this president of the mercenary union was practically the big boy next door that never grew up. Seeing that Bei Qining had left, Su Luo turned her head around to ask curiously, "Is this here the areas of water with water spouts?" Nangong Luyun was calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos as he tidied up her slightly disarrayed hair for her. There was a touch of a tenderness on his face, as he shallowly smiled and said, "This is merely the beginning and nothing more. Are you afraid?" Chapter 345, Fright on Board. 4. Su Luo's beautiful pupils roamed, while she lifted an eyebrow and smiled. "What's to be afraid of? My swimming technique is pretty good, want to have a race with me?" Nangong Luyun's intoxicating, fluid glance could move heartstrings. He spoilingly and indulgently rubbed her head. "Little crow's beak, 1, I hope what you said will not hit the mark." Could the implication be that this huge luxurious yacht could still sink? Su Luo stuck out her tongue and poked her head out of Nangong Luyun's embrace to explore. She looked towards where Bei Qining and them were, and somewhat curiously asked, "What are they doing?" "Suppressing the waterspouts." Nangong Luyun led Su Luo along by the hand, his mood was extremely relaxed. "Do you want to go and have a look? These few guys normally live like princes, it's rare for them to use their strength. We ought to have a good look, there are not many opportunities of this kind." The always terse, laconic and "silence is golden" Nangong Luyun would only say long sentences in front of Su Luo. Also, only she was worth him spending a lot of patience to come over to entice and coax her. Since this was a rare opportunity, naturally, she would not miss it. Su Luo hurriedly nodded her head. She cast Nangong Luyun's hand aside and ran towards the place where Bei Qining and them were located. That place was at the bow of the ship, it could let her clearly see the situation on the sea surface up ahead. Nangong Luyun pampering and spoilingly followed behind her. At any time, he was prepared to protect her well. Yet, he completely disregarded the pile of women lying on the ground with almost all the bones in their bodies shattered into pieces. Su Luo could clearly see, that ahead, for as far as the eye could see, there were huge whirlpools that appeared on the sea surface. They looked like the wide open, bloody maw of a beast of prey showing off their strength by casting sidelong glances at them. In the distance, Su Luo saw a ship that was dodging left and right, but finally, it was still swept up by the waterspout. It disappeared completely in a flash, not leaving behind even a bit of a trace. That ship was about 50 meters long. Although it wasn't comparable to their current yacht, it also wasn't considered that much smaller. However, with just the effort of the blink of an eye, it was engulfed completely. This made Su Luo unable to help but to start to be more serious and prudent. "Afraid?" Nangong Luyun calmly stood by her side, he reached out his hand to encircle her waist and fastened her to his chest. Threads of silken hair which were black as ink and were like ribbons, poured down in torrents. A light breeze brushed past, bringing a burst of a good scent that was the sweet scent of jasper flowers. He looked at her deeply and enticingly, unblinkingly watching her. It appeared as if he was looking at the most precious treasure. Su Luo looked at him, then turned her head again to look at the waterspouts that reached the sky. The rolled-up waves on the sea surface were like hundreds of flowers, forcing the huge yacht to lean east, then almost fall to the west. The huge waves that hit the hull caused an earth-shattering water scream, sending out bursts of booms and rumbling sounds. They were surrounded by perils which almost couldn't be avoided or fled from. Those black waterspouts seemed to be terrifyingly sinister and murderous-looking. In front of nature's anger, at the time where the large waves covered the sky, mankind just seemed so insignificant. Su Luo looked ahead, and indifferently said, "Not that frightening." Because with him here, he wouldn't let her have an accident. Just at this moment, the originally steady hull of the yacht, all of a sudden, shuddered violently. Huge waves, one after another, again rushed over to attack. Those huge waves that covered the sky swirled the yacht up high and once again threw it down heavily. With Nangong Luyun acting as her shield, Su Luo nestled into his side, her body actually didn't even move a little bit. While those few women brought by Beichen Ing and them had long ago taken the rope the sailors tossed to them. One end of the rope was tied to the hull of the yacht, while the other was tied around their waist. Thus, even though it would be extremely painful to be thrown up high and fell down, but at least, they wouldn't be thrown off the ship. They could still save their life. In this perilous situation, Su Luo's gaze landed upon Anya Ming and Lan Xian's body. 1. Crow's beak, a person who made an inauspicious remark. Chapter 346, Fright on Board. 5. Only at this moment did she find out that Anya Ming had the water attribute and Lan Xian had the wind attribute. Anya Ming's eyes narrowed slightly as he condensed all the spirit strength in his body. The resulting radiance seemed to contain an inexhaustible force, directly containing the waterspouts ahead of them. This caused the sea surface to become tranquil. And Lan Xian followed with controlling the wind speed in their surroundings. He concentrated all the wind speed to the rear of the yacht, making the yacht advance forward with great speed. Since this was area of water filled with waterspouts, then there wouldn't be merely one waterspout, rather, it was continuous and with no end. It was rows on top of rows, practically unable to see the end. With regards to Anya Ming's strength, he was unable to control all of the waterspouts, but he could control the ones within the range of 100 meters in front of them on the sea surface. Therefore, the scene right now was established by Anya Ming concentrating his spirit powers to open up a straight line of tranquil areas of water that was 100 meters long and 50 meters wide. Lan Xian, meanwhile, hastened the wind speed to blow the yacht to move at its best and fastest speed. In this situation where the huge waves overflowed to the sky, wanting to create a region of tranquil areas of water, what degree of difficulty must it be? In less than a quarter of an hour, Anya Ming's face was coated in a thin layer of perspiration and his complexion had also become paler. Lan Xian's complexion was not that much better than Anya Ming's. His expression had a touch of being in a difficult situation. But the energy they sacrificed was worth it, because even if the surroundings were full of huge waves that covered the sky from endless waterspouts, yet their yacht continued to advance forward at a smooth and rapid speed. It wasn't being thrown around left and right like before, causing injury and deaths among the crew. Under this kind of situation and silence. A sound of alarm was suddenly shouted out from among the crowd of people. Su Luo looked towards the source of the sound. Momentarily, her expression became a little complicated. To the left side, not far away, a ship sailed continuously towards their direction. Su Luo guessed, the other side might have seen their yacht float across the sea surface in a straight line on a calm sea, and thought that this was a route to flee for their lives. As a result, even if they were slapped around by the huge waves, they would still try to draw close to their side. The other side, with great difficulty, arrived behind the yacht. However, before they could give voice to their joy, in an instant, they were swept up by a huge waterspout into the darkness of the underworld. It was a pity that the other side did not know, this area of tranquil water was not naturally created by the heavens, rather, it was brought about by an expert water element mage. Furthermore, the sustainable time was over in a blink of an eye. After their yacht sailed past, that tranquil area naturally was again restored into a treacherous waterspouts. It was unfortunate that the other side had strived for a long time to finally arrive right behind the yacht, but was still buried at sea. Su Luo frowned slightly. Even though everyone knows that to cross the areas of water filled with waterspouts is very treacherous, why would they still come to throw away their lives? It seemed to her that people who could cross this body of water were like Anya Ming and Lan Xian kind of people. One was a water system expert, another was a wind system expert, both of them acting in concert were able to get them safely through. Nangong Luyun smiled while shaking his head. Human beings will die for riches just as birds will for food. Su Luo thought about it and felt that it was just like this. On this continent, how difficult was it to find the green crystal stone, but one amethyst thorned fish was equivalent to the value of one piece of green-colored crystal stone. And it was also an opportunity that came only once a year. If you could cross the waterspouts to catch an amethyst thorned fish, even if it was merely one fish, you would have also made a fortune. Nangong Luyun faintly smiled while lifting an eyebrow and lightly said, "Actually, how could amethyst thorned fish be hooked so easily? It isn't easy to hook. Wasn't it merely a fish that swam in water? If you couldn't hook one, then couldn't you just throw a net to catch it?" With one glance, Nangong Luyun was able to see those Su Luo's thoughts and slowly shook his head. An amethyst thorned fish, how intelligent is it? How sharp is its teeth? How could a fishnet trap it? Only if it wants to take the bait, otherwise, nobody could capture it. Chapter 347, Fright on Board, 6, Unexpectedly, there were additional things she needed to pay attention to. Then, looks like it would be very difficult to catch one. However, you needn't be worried. Nangong Luyun gave off a wicked radiance that was dazzlingly beautiful and devilishly charming. This king's little princess has always had good luck. Other people might not be able to catch any, but Luo'er will certainly return from the journey well rewarded. How could it be possible? Su Luo sent him a glare. Don't have such high expectations for me, otherwise you will be very disappointed. Nangong Luyun used his hands to stand up. He calmly said, time after time, when has Luo girl let this king be disappointed? Therefore, this king has very, very high expectations for you. Don't feel like paying you any attention. Su Luo snorted. Actually, truth be told, in her former life and this one, she didn't even know how to fish. Let alone going to hook such a full of spirit power amethyst thorned fish. Simply thinking about it gave her a headache. Anya Ming and Lan Xian's thin layer of perspiration condensed into bead size, and the two of them tumbled down. In a short time, they looked extremely exhausted. Su Luo poked Nangong Luyun's arm. Aren't you going to go up and lend a hand? Nangong Luyun fiddled with Su Luo's hair and unhurriedly let out a hum. This king is busy keeping Luo girl company, where would I have the time to bother with them? Su Luo was immediately speechless. At this kind of dangerous time, this guy could be so careless as to tease her. She really should not use common sense to reason with him. Fortunately, Anya Ming and Lan Xian both worked hard and did not fall short. Even though they were frighteningly exhausted, nevertheless, they persevered with their teeth clenched. Probably after about an hour later, the body of water in front of them became dead calm. Under the light of the sun, the clear and crystalline water gleamed from the reflected rays. Who could have anticipated that in the deepest part of the waterspout-filled waters, there would be such tranquil waters, as if heaven and earth had become one? Birds were flying and fishes were jumping, the cool breeze blew gently and not a wave rippled. Under the sunshine, the sky was clear and the air was pure. The waves were arranged like smooth lengths of silk cloths, coming slowly by sliding, then leaving again evenly. It gave people a kind of serene, peaceful and quiet feeling. Compared to just now, being surrounded by the perilous areas of water full of waterspouts, they was completely two opposite situations, a difference like heaven and earth. Anya Ming and Lan Xian, both of them were completely lacking in form as they dropped down to sit on the deck, gasping large mouthfuls of air and panting coarsely. Their clothing was soaked through with perspiration from head to toe. They now appeared battered and exhausted, so weary that they couldn't even speak. They only continued to breathe in large mouthfuls of fresh air. Oh yeah, at last, we have finally crossed through. Didn't know from where Beichening came out from. He very kindly extended each of them a cup of fresh water, but also continued to grumble. Needless for me to say to you guys, last year, it only took a quarter of an hour to cross. Unexpectedly this year, it took an hour. Do you guys not feel any shame? Lan Xian directly sent a kick towards him. You, hey, shut up for me, your daddy, Last year, Nangong Luyun put on a one-man show, of course it was effortless. You have the ability, then next year you do it. It was all very well to talk, but doing it was another matter. Last year, seeing Nangong Luyun, that kind of effortless, at ease and calm manner, made them think it was very simple. Didn't expect that once they took over the position, they would find out how difficult it was to control the waterspouts and the yacht's speed. Bei Chening was nimble as a rabbit, easily avoiding the kick and pouted his brilliantly red lips, saying, "What's so difficult about this? Next year, I and sister-in-law together, absolutely will beat you guys' speed." When Bei Chening finished speaking, with a face eagerly attentive and trying to get the desired result, smiled towards Su Luo. His smiling expression was so radiant that only his teeth showed, while his eyes could not be seen. "Sister-in-law, you also agree, right? Next year, the two of us will partner up and let them see." Su Luo hadn't even replied before Lan Xian rolled his eyes at Bei Chening, saying, "That's enough already, just your little schemes, who doesn't know? Openly shouting out for sister-in-law to partner together with you, when ultimately, the one exerting himself, isn't it still Nangong?" Bei Chenying's thoughts were laid bare, but he didn't get angry and merely gave two humps. "Don't you guys underestimate sister-in-law. If I was to tell, you guys will be scared to death." Chapter 348, Fright on Board, 7, in a single brush stroke's worth of time, Nangong Luyun suddenly came and cut in with a line, "That can certainly be arranged. It's decided then, next year, it will just be you and Luo girl. This king will not interfere." "Just that girl?" Anya Ming and Lan Xian glanced at Su Luo doubtfully. According to the information they received, this fourth miss from the Su family was proclaimed as a good-for-nothing after the result of her spirit test at the age of 5. Later on, although she had concealed her strength and secretly cultivated, she was still merely at the strength of a third rank. Merely at the level of a third rank, even with Bei Chening as a partner, how could they be able to traverse across this territory full of waterspouts in a situation without Nangong Luyun's help? Was this a joke? Even the two of them, who were both 6th rank in cultivation, were exhausted to the max. "All right." Anya Ming and Lan Xian both somewhat humorously shook their heads. Love truly made people blind. They never thought that someone as wise and far-sighted as Nangong would also have such muddled moments. Su Luo originally wanted to flatly reject it, but once she saw both Anya Ming and Lan Xian's expressions of complete disbelief, if she was to flatly refuse now, would she not be taken lightly by them? While she was hesitating, Bei Chening had already agreed. Compared to Anya Ming and Lan Xian, Bei Chenying's understanding of Su Luo was a little deeper. After his initial shock passed, he immediately nodded his agreement. "Good, it's a deal." With that said, Bei Chening smugly grinned at Su Luo and said, "Sister-in-law, did you hear that? Next year's catch of amethyst thorned fish will be split between the two of us." He. Su Luo then realized that actually, whomever put in the effort to cross the territory of waterspouts, the catch of amethyst thorned fish for that year would belong to them. Nangong Luyun's eyes gleamed with demonic light. "You should simply focus on catching your fish. Whatever amethyst thorned fish you catch, will all naturally belong to you, they won't be that shameless to snatch from you." "How can you say it like that, making us seem like pirates?" Lan Xian indignantly said. He turned around to heroically say to Su Luo while waving his hand, "Sister-in-law, just like Nangong said, you go ahead and fish for yourself. The amethyst thorned fish you catch will naturally all belong to you, we won't take a single one." Anya Ming also righteously joined in and continued, "Lan Xian's words are my words. We definitely do not want any of sister-in-law's amethyst thorned fishes. Besides, what amethyst thorned fish could a mere little third-rank martial artist catch? Not being caught back by the amethyst thorned fish instead could already be considered pretty good." Anya Ming and Lan Xian simply did not believe that Su Luo had the ability to catch any amethyst thorned fish. Therefore, the two of them vowed their refusal in unison. The pitiful duo did not know that very soon, because of their decision, they would pay a very bitter price and regret it till their intestines turned green. Didn't know how long they had traveled, when a tiny island appeared ahead. This was the legendary amethyst-thorned island. Except, the island was barren, so flat that one could gallop right across, and there was absolutely nothing on it. Sparsely surrounding the island were some parked yachts. Seeing the luxury yacht flying Prince Jean Royal's banner, those who had already arrived on the amethyst-thorned island all looked over. They respectfully assembled, awaiting His Highness Prince Jin's arrival to grace them with his presence. Nangong Luyun disembarked holding Su Luo's hand, leisurely descending by stepping on the wooden gangplank. With black as a base color and gold trims on the hems, his brocade robe was folded in layers like a cloudy fog. It had barely appeared, and it already immediately brought about a complete, dignified aura. Su Luo originally wanted to shake off his hand. But, his arm was so strong and powerful that regardless of how she shook, she couldn't shake him off. Didn't know why this time, Nangong Luyun seemed to be especially stubborn. No matter how gently she cajoled him, his hand firmly held hers and wouldn't loosen even for a moment. Chapter 349, Fright on Board, 8, having no other alternative, Su Luo could only bite the bullet and follow by his side, enduring the crowd's stares. Subsequently, Bai Qining, Anya Ming and Lan Xian, every single one of them appeared, self-confident, unafraid and without regard for others. Each and every one of their entrance gave the crowd an intense and awe-inspiring visual impression. Each of them were arrogant sons of heaven, with large clans supporting behind each of them. Their statuses were exceedingly high and precious, such that should they have a mishap, very likely, the entire continent would be thrown in turmoil. The instant he saw Su Luo, the face of a person among the crowd immediately blackened. The crown prince's pair of eyes were malicious. His complexion became gloomy enough that water could drip out from it. Earlier, there were already rumors of Nangong Luyun and Su Luo having an affair. Initially, he did not believe it. Because Nangong Luyun was what kind of exalted person, how could he fancy a good-for-nothing like Su Luo? Only, he could never have imagined, that a girl he did not want to marry and personally broke off the engagement with, would in the blink of an eye, hook up with Nangong Luyun. This was simply a slap to his face. The crown prince coldly glared at Su Luo, seeing her walk past by his side, he couldn't help but to coldly snort, "Loathsome girl, who allowed you to come here? What qualifications do you have to be in this place?" Su Luo dismissively cast him a glance. Oh. The crown prince? How could she bump into him? Really unlucky. Without waiting for Su Luo to reply, Bai Qining, who was on the side, had already jumped out. With matters that could make it difficult for the crown prince, he was always the first in line. One could see Bai Qining with his hands folded behind his back, strutting over. He cast sidelong glances at the crown prince with head high and chest out. Oh. Here I was wondering who it is. So, it turned out to be Nangong Liujue. Ah. What, last year, you couldn't even catch a single fish. Did you come here to disgrace yourself again this year? Bai Qining, this child's words, were just that adorably honest. A single sentence had already made the crown prince choke until his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. The crown prince viciously glared at him, then coldly snorted a few times. This prince is speaking with Su Luo, what are you mouthing off for? Bai Qining did not mind the crown prince's attitude one bit and started laughing instead. I say, you're such an interesting person. The other person obviously can't be bothered with you, why are you jolting your butt so eagerly, to move closer? You're even the crown prince, how shameless. The crown prince's face grew livid. Did this little brat know how to speak properly? Why did every sentence seem to be dipped in venom, simply could poison people to death? The crown prince angrily huffed and glared once more at Bai Qining before turning his head to holler at Su Luo, you, come over here for this prince. Su Luo somewhat speechlessly rolled her eyes at this crown prince, too. Was this person sick? Did she have any relation to him? He really thought himself to be so desirable. Su Luo appeared not to have heard him. She turned her head towards another direction, admiring the scenery in the distance with great interest. Who knew that this move of hers would offend the crown prince completely? One could see him stomping quickly towards Su Luo, his long arm reaching out to pull her away with a tug. However, before he could even get close to Su Luo, suddenly, the tip of a sword flew towards his arms. The crown prince jumped back in fright. If he had insisted on going to pull Su Luo, then this arm would certainly be gone. The crown prince's line of sight pinned on Nangong Luyun poisonously, before turning to glare at Su Luo. Get over here for this prince. You as such a fickle woman, still aren't ashamed yet. This line of his, simply designated Su Luo as part of his own belongings. No matter how good Su Luo's temperament was, she was still infuriated by him. Not to mention, Su Luo's temper had never been good to begin with. One only saw the corners of her lips cocking up icily as she threw a sidelong glance at the crown prince. Her voice became increasingly dismissive. Nangong Liujue, open up your dog eyes wide and see clearly. We have already broken our engagement and no longer have any relationship, not even a little bit. So cease using your status as crown prince to disgust me. 1. It's been used many times in this story before, but it's a lot funnier when you know the words we replaced with eagerly is actually an intensifier that means jolting buttocks, like the shaking ass of a follower hurrying to keep up and please someone. So much humor is lost even when jolting buttocks is added. Sigh, 2, translator response by Nivrim. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.